Hey everyone, welcome back to Dark Harry. Today we're diving into an amazing story called What If Thing Delivered Harry's Hogwarts Letter and the Addams Family Invaded the Dursleys. Freedom. If you love these stories, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us bring more content to you. Without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1, The Hand That Delivers the Hogwarts Letter. For Harry Potter sat on Albus Dumbledore's desk, stubbornly undelivered despite 7 separate owls attempting to complete the task. The latest messenger, a particularly determined tawny owl named Bartholomew, had returned singed, disoriented, and missing several tail feathers. Most unusual, Dumbledore muttered, stroking his beard as McGonagall paced behind him. 7 owls, Albus. 7. The Dursleys must be actively preventing delivery. McGonagall's Scottish brogue sharpened with irritation. I told you they were the worst sort of muggles. A sudden crack of thunder split the air outside, though the sky remained clear. Both professors turned toward the window as a swirling vortex of purple smoke materialized on the castle grounds. What in Merlin's name? McGonagall began. The smoke dissipated, revealing a pale man in an impeccably tailored pinstriped suit, his hair slicked back and a thin mustache adorning his upper lip. Beside him stood a woman of ethereal beauty dressed entirely in black, her dress flowing like liquid shadow across the grass. The Addamses, Dumbledore whispered, a rare expression of surprise crossing his aged face. The who? McGonagall asked. A family as old as magic itself. Neither fully wizard nor muggle, something altogether different. Within minutes, the strange couple stood in Dumbledore's office, the man kissing McGonagall's hand enthusiastically while the woman examined the singed owl with cool interest. Gomez Addams, the man announced, clicking his heels together. And my wife, the exquisite Morticia. Charmed, Morticia said, her voice like velvet draped over ice. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? Dumbledore asked, eyes twinkling despite his wariness. Gomez twirled his mustache. We're here about the boy, Harry Potter. The magic between worlds is in chaos. Our cousin ITT felt the disturbance from America. Sent us straight away. The boy's letter cannot be delivered, Morticia added, running a pale finger along the parchment on Dumbledore's desk. Your conventional methods have failed. And you propose? Dumbledore let the question hang. Gomez grinned manically and snapped his fingers. From his breast pocket emerged a disembodied hand, scuttling across his shoulder like a spider. This is Thing, Gomez declared proudly. Family retainer for centuries. No magic can detect him, no barrier can stop him. McGonagall took an involuntary step back. Albus, you can't possibly, an intriguing solution, Dumbledore interrupted, leaning forward. Thing, is it? Can you deliver this letter directly to Harry Potter, ensuring he reads it himself? Thing formed a perfect OK symbol with his fingers. Excellent! Gomez exclaimed. Thing has never failed a mission. Morticia's dark eyes locked with Dumbledore's. But understand, Headmaster, if Thing discovers anything concerning about the boy's situation, we will know. The Addams family takes care of its own, and magic this ancient creates connections that cannot be denied. The boy is perfectly safe, Dumbledore assured them. We shall see, Morticia replied, her smile revealing nothing. For days later, Vernon Dursley stomped around number 4, Privet Drive, his face an alarming shade of puce as he boarded up the mail slot. No more letters, he bellowed, hammering nails with unnecessary force. Not through the windows, not with the milk, not with the bloody eggs. Inside the cupboard under the stairs, Harry Potter pressed his ear against the door, trying to make sense of his uncle's latest meltdown. For days now, mysterious letters addressed to him had appeared throughout the house, each one destroyed by Uncle Vernon before Harry could read beyond, Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs. The mere existence of mail for Harry had thrown the entire household into chaos. Uncle Vernon hadn't gone to work, Aunt Petunia's lips had practically disappeared from constant pursing, and Dudley was too confused to even bully Harry properly. Harry's stomach growled. In the commotion, no one had remembered to feed him since breakfast yesterday, a single piece of toast with no butter. He shifted on his thin mattress, accidentally knocking over a small collection of broken toy soldiers he'd salvaged from Dudley's trash. "Boy!" Vernon's voice boomed from outside. "Don't think I don't hear you in there. One peep, one. And you'll stay in that cupboard until Christmas." Harry sighed and leaned back against the wall. Spiders crawled along the ceiling, his only companions in the dark, cramped space. He'd grown used to them over the years, sometimes even giving them names when loneliness pressed too hard against his chest. Sleep eventually claimed him, hunger and confusion fading into dreams of flying motorcycles and flashing green light. He didn't notice when, well after midnight, the cupboard's small vent slowly unscrewed itself from the outside. A single hand, detached from any arm or body, wiggled through the opening, carrying a thick envelope between its fingers. The hand paused, adjusting to the darkness, then skittered silently across the floor like a five-legged crab. Thing, for that was indeed his name, had traveled a long way, crossing the Atlantic and navigating the entirety of Surrey with only his innate sense of direction. He'd spent hours observing the Dursley household, watching the whale-like man board up every conceivable entrance, and had nearly been stepped on twice by the giraffe-necked woman patrolling the kitchen. Now, mission nearly complete, Thing paused at the edge of Harry's mattress. The boy slept fitfully, his lightning-shaped scar visible in the dim light filtering through the vent. Thing crawled closer, his movements delicate despite having no eyes to see with. Thing gently tapped Harry's shoulder. Harry jolted awake, a small gasp escaping before he could catch it. His eyes widened impossibly as they focused on the disembodied hand holding an envelope. To Thing's surprise, the boy didn't scream. Instead, Harry simply stared, then whispered, "Hello." Thing waved. Harry blinked rapidly behind his taped glasses. "I'm either dreaming or I've finally gone mad from being in this cupboard too long." Thing shook himself in a clear negative gesture, then extended the letter toward Harry. Hesitantly, Harry took it. "Is this, for me?" "Really?" Thing gave an enthusiastic thumbs up. The envelope was heavy and made of yellowish parchment. By the dim light coming through the vent, Harry could see it was addressed in emerald green ink, "Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging Surrey." His fingers trembled as he broke the purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms. Thing watched expectantly as Harry unfolded the letter and began to read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confede, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress." Harry read the letter 3 times, his breathing quickening with each pass. Witchcraft? Wizardry? Is this some kind of joke? Thing emphatically shook himself again, then pointed at Harry, making a series of gestures that seemed to indicate magic flowing from the boy's fingertips. "You're saying I'm a wizard?" Harry whispered, the word feeling strange on his tongue. Thing nodded vigorously. "That's impossible. I'm just Harry. Just, nobody." Thing wagged a finger disapprovingly, then patted Harry's knee in what felt remarkably like compassion. "Who sent you? Who are you?" Thing held up a finger in the universal, "wait a moment," gesture, then scurried to the corner of the cupboard where a pencil stub lay forgotten. He dragged it back along with a scrap of paper from Harry's pathetic pile of possessions. With surprising dexterity, Thing wrote, "Thing Addams" in jagged letters. "Thing Addams," Harry read aloud. "That's your name? You're a hand named Thing?" Thing bowed dramatically. Despite everything, Harry laughed, a soft, surprised sound quickly muffled behind his own hand. It had been so long since he'd found anything genuinely funny that the sensation felt almost foreign. I don't understand any of this, but, Harry glanced back at the letter. It says they await my owl. What does that mean? I don't have an owl. Thing made a writing motion. Harry handed back the pencil stub, and Thing wrote, I'll take message. So you're like, a magic postman? Harry asked. Thing gave a so-so gesture, then pointed at the letter again, clearly wanting Harry to continue reading. Harry flipped to the second page, which contained a list of required supplies so outlandish he almost laughed again. Uniform first-year students will require, 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black, 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon hide or similar, 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following: The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1. By Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Phillida Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsenius Jigger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other Equipment. 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter, standard size 2, 1 set glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks, a wand, cauldrons, dragon hide gloves. Harry shook his head in disbelief. Even if this is real, which I'm not saying it is, the Dursleys would never buy me any of this. They barely buy me socks. Thing's fingers curled in what appeared to be anger. He scribbled again, family coming. Family? My family? Harry asked, confused. Before Thing could clarify, heavy footsteps thudded on the stairs above, sending dust raining down on them. Vernon Dursley was awake and moving around. Boy! Where's my coffee? Vernon bellowed from upstairs. Thing quickly snatched the letter from Harry's hands and stuffed it under the thin mattress, then pointed firmly at Harry and made a shoo gesture. I have to go, Harry whispered urgently. If Uncle Vernon finds you here. The cupboard door rattled as a meaty hand fumbled with the latch. Hide! Harry hissed, but Thing was already scurrying toward the vent. Before he could escape, the door flew open, flooding the small space with harsh light. What's taking so long, boy? Vernon demanded, his small eyes narrowing as they adjusted to the cupboard's dimness. Harry stood quickly, hoping to draw attention away from the corner where Thing was pressing himself flat against the wall. Sorry, Uncle Vernon. I was just, what's that? Vernon barked, pointing at the moving shadow. Harry froze, his mind racing for an explanation. It's just a spider, Uncle Vernon. A bloody big spider, Vernon muttered, squinting. His eyes widened suddenly. Wait a minute. Before Harry could stop him, Vernon lunged into the cupboard, surprisingly agile for a man of his size, and made a grab for Thing. Thing dodged, scuttling up the wall with remarkable speed. It's a hand. Vernon roared, his face turning that dangerous shade of purple that always preceded the worst punishments. A disembodied, moving hand. More freakishness. I don't know what it is. Harry protested. It just appeared. Vernon made another grab for Thing, who leaped nimbly onto the man's shoulder. Vernon screamed, a high-pitched sound utterly at odds with his massive frame, and began spinning in circles, swatting at Thing. Get it off! Get it off! Petunia appeared at the cupboard door, her nightgown pulled tight around her bony frame. Vernon! What on earth? Her scream joined her husband's as she spotted Thing, now riding Vernon's head like a rodeo cowboy. Thing gave Harry a quick salute before launching himself toward the front door, skittering across the hallway floor with Vernon in hot pursuit, still bellowing like a wounded rhinoceros. Catch it, Petunia. Don't let it escape. Petunia, however, had climbed onto a hallway chair, continuing to scream while pointing frantically. Dudley emerged from his bedroom, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's happening?" he whined. "A hand, Dudleykins. A detached hand in the house." Petunia shrieked. Dudley's mouth formed a perfect O of horror before he too began screaming. In the chaos, Harry snatched his letter from under the mattress and stuffed it into the waistband of his oversized pajama pants, covering it with his shirt. He then ventured cautiously into the hallway, where Vernon was now wielding a cricket bat, smashing it against furniture and walls as Thing expertly evaded each swing. "I'll kill it. I'll smash it to pieces," Vernon roared. Thing reached the front door, which was still bolted shut from Vernon's anti-letter measures. He paused, seemingly trapped, as Vernon advanced with the cricket bat raised high. "Got you now, you freakish thing." Just as Vernon brought the bat down, Thing leaped onto the man's arm, ran up to his shoulder, and, in a move that made even Harry gasp, delivered a stinging slap across Vernon's face before diving into the mail slot that Vernon had forgotten to board up from the inside. Vernon howled, more from outrage than pain, and ripped the door open to continue the chase. But Thing had vanished into the pre-dawn darkness, his mission complete. What was that? Dudley whimpered from the stairs. Vernon slammed the door shut, breathing heavily. Nothing. Nothing at all. Just a large insect. That wasn't an insect, Vernon, Petunia hissed, still perched on her chair. That was like those things. From her world. Her eyes darted to Harry, narrowing with suspicion and fear. Harry tried to make himself invisible, pressing back against the wall, but Vernon's rage needed a target, and Harry was the only available option. "You!" Vernon stormed toward him, face now almost maroon. "This is your doing. Your freakishness is spreading." "I didn't do anything," Harry protested, backing into his cupboard. "It just appeared." "Liar!" Vernon roared, grabbing Harry by the collar of his too large shirt. "First those letters, now this. What's next? More of your kind showing up at our door." Harry didn't answer, partly from fear but mostly because he was desperately trying to keep his precious letter from falling out of his waistband. Vernon shook him, his jowls quivering with rage. "I won't have it. Do you hear me, boy? I won't have it." With that, he shoved Harry back into the cupboard and slammed the door, sliding the bolt into place with a decisive click. "No meals today," Vernon declared through the door. "Maybe hunger will drive the freakishness out of you." Harry heard his uncle stomping away, barking orders at Aunt Petunia to check all the windows and doors. Dudley was still whimpering about the zombie hand that had invaded their home. In the darkness of his cupboard, Harry carefully retrieved the letter from his waistband. It was slightly crumpled but intact. He traced the embossed seal with his fingertip, a strange feeling bubbling in his chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Hogwarts," he whispered to himself. "Witchcraft and wizardry." He thought about Thing and his impossible existence. If a living, detached hand could be real, why not magic? Why not wizards? For the first time in his life, Harry allowed himself to imagine an existence beyond Privet Drive, beyond the cupboard, the hand-me-downs, and the constant hunger. Beyond the Dursleys and their suffocating normalcy. He fell asleep clutching the letter to his chest, dreaming of wands and spells and a strange family connected to a brave little hand named Thing. Thing Addams had traveled many miles and accomplished many missions in his centuries of service to the Addams family, but none had filled him with quite the same righteous indignation as his current situation. As he scurried through the gardens of Privet Drive, keeping to the shadows, he mentally composed the report he would deliver to Gomez and Morticia. The houses here were identical, aggressively so, as if conformity were not merely encouraged but enforced. Thing found it deeply unsettling. Where were the cobwebs? The gargoyles? The healthy coating of dust and decay that made a house a home? And the boy? Thing had seen much in his long existence, but the sight of a child locked in a cupboard smaller than the Addams family's coffin collection stirred something protective in him. The Addams family had many peculiar customs and embraced pain as an old friend, but they would never dream of truly harming a child, especially not one with such obvious magical potential. Thing reached the end of the street and paused at a storm drain. He tapped out a complex pattern on the metal grating, and it swung open silently. Slipping inside, Thing descended into the darkness, navigating the labyrinthine sewer system with practiced ease until he reached a curious intersection where the bricks formed a perfect pentagram. He tapped the center stone, which glowed briefly before sliding back to reveal a small, pulsating purple portal. Without hesitation, Thing leaped through. The journey took mere seconds, though it spanned thousands of miles. Thing emerged in the cavernous entrance hall of the Addams family mansion, where Lurch was dusting a collection of medieval torture devices with meticulous care. "Ah, you're back," Lurch rumbled in his bass voice, noticing Thing scuttling across the floor. "The family is waiting." Thing gave a quick salute and hurried toward the main living room, where voices could be heard in animated conversation. "Absolutely absurd notion," Grandmama was saying as Thing entered. "Lily Potter's child, raised by muggles. Might as well put a unicorn in a dog kennel." The Addams family was gathered around a bubbling cauldron set atop the antique coffee table. Gomez paced excitedly, puffing on his cigar, while Morticia reclined on the Victorian fainting couch, stroking her Venus flytrap. Wednesday and Pugsley sat on the floor, Wednesday methodically dismembering a doll while Pugsley attached small explosives to its separated limbs. "Ah, Thing!" Gomez exclaimed, spotting the hand. "The prodigal appendage returns. Did you deliver the letter? Did you see the boy?" Thing leaped onto the table beside the cauldron and began signing rapidly in the family's special hand language. "What's he saying, Mother?" Wednesday asked, momentarily pausing her doll's surgery. Morticia's eyes narrowed as she interpreted. "The boy is kept in a cupboard under the stairs." "Marvelous." Gomez beamed. "Private quarters. I spent 3 glorious years walled up in the East Wing chimney as a lad. Character building." "Not by choice, dear," Morticia clarified, her voice cooling several degrees. "The child is being punished. Starved." Gomez's exuberance faltered. "Starved? Without proper instruments or ceremony?" Thing continued signing frantically. "No toys," Morticia translated. "Oversized clothes. Verbal abuse. And they call him Freak." A hush fell over the room. Even the cauldron seemed to bubble more quietly. "That's not right," Pugsley said, unexpectedly serious. "Freaks are special. Like us." "Indeed," Grandmama agreed, her ancient eyes flashing dangerously. "The boy is Lily Evans' son. She had power, wild, beautiful power. Her sister always resented her for it." "Evans?" Gomez perked up. "Any relation to Erasmus Evans, the scourge of Southampton? Delightful fellow, removed his own head to win a bet in 1702. Distant cousin," Grandmama waved dismissively. The magical line thinned over generations, then surged unexpectedly with Lily. "She visited once, you know. Before she married that Potter boy." "You never mentioned this," Morticia said, surprised. "Wasn't relevant until now," Grandmama shrugged. "She came seeking advice about her powers, they were different from the wand waver's magic. More like ours. I taught her a few things, gave her some potions. She sent a Christmas card the year the boy was born." The old woman's face softened. "Called him Harry." "Harry," Wednesday repeated, testing the name. "Does he like pain?" "Wednesday, darling, not everyone appreciates the exquisite pleasure of suffering as we do," Morticia gently corrected. Thing tapped insistently on the table, then pointed at the grandfather clock in the corner. "Thing's right," Gomez declared, suddenly businesslike. "Time is wasting. The boy has his letter, but those ghastly muggles will never let him respond, let alone attend Hogwarts. We must intervene. The old wizard said not to interfere, Lurch reminded them from the doorway. Bah! When have the Addamses ever let rules constrain us? Gomez scoffed. We follow a higher law, the call of family. If Harry Potter has Addams connections, however distant, he falls under our protection. Dumbledore mentioned protective wards around the house, Morticia mused. Blood magic tied to the ant. Thing signed rapidly again. What wards? Gomez translated, laughing. Thing says he waltzed right in without so much as a tingle. Of course, Grandmama cackled. Addams' magic is older than their wand-waving nonsense. We were practicing the dark arts when Hogwarts was just a twinkle in the founder's eyes. Then it's decided, Morticia rose gracefully, her dress flowing around her like living shadow. We shall pay a visit to this Privet Drive. Assess the situation personally. Can we bring our new explosives, Mother? Pugsley asked hopefully, holding up a suspicious-looking package. Not this time, dear, Morticia smiled indulgently. We want to make a good impression. I'll bring my guillotine instead, Wednesday suggested. It's more formal. That's my girl, Gomez beamed, scooping Wednesday up and spinning her around. Always thinking of etiquette. First things first, Grandmama interrupted, stirring the cauldron with a femur bone. We need to neutralize whatever monitoring spells Dumbledore has in place. Can't have him interfering before we've properly introduced ourselves. Thing saluted and scurried off to prepare the necessary items for the journey, his small form filled with a sense of purpose. The boy in the cupboard would not remain there long, not if the Addams family had anything to say about it. And the Addams family always had something to say. 3 days after Thing's visit, Harry remained locked in his cupboard, allowed out only for bathroom breaks and to cook meals he wasn't permitted to eat. The letter remained hidden beneath a loose floorboard, taken out only in the dead of night when the house was silent. He'd read it so many times he could recite it from memory, but still, the words seemed fantastical. A wizard? Him. The same Harry Potter who couldn't even stop Dudley from using him as a punching bag? Yet the evidence of Thing's visit, a living, disembodied hand, made it impossible to dismiss entirely. Uncle Vernon had installed 3 new locks on the front door and taken to carrying a cricket bat around the house, jumping at every unexpected sound. On the 3rd night of his confinement, Harry woke suddenly, unsure what had disturbed his sleep. The house was quiet, no Dursley snores, no creaking pipes, nothing. Complete, unnatural silence. Then he heard it, a soft tapping on his cupboard door. Not from outside in the hallway, but from inside, as if something were trying to get out rather than in. Harry sat up slowly, heart pounding. Hello. The tapping stopped, replaced by a scratching sound as something carved into the wood. Harry squinted in the darkness, barely able to make out letters being etched into the inside of his door, friends coming. Be ready. Thing. Harry whispered. Is that you? A familiar hand squeezed through the vent, giving him a thumbs up before making a series of gestures Harry couldn't interpret. I don't understand, Harry admitted. Thing paused, then slowly traced letters in the air, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. Family coming to help. Your family? Harry asked, both intrigued and terrified by the prospect. When? Thing held up 3 fingers, then pointed downward. 3, what? Days? Hours? Thing shook himself, then pointed more insistently downward. 3, floors down. No, that doesn't make sense. 3 minutes. Thing formed an OK symbol, then held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes. Harry felt a surge of panic. But the Dursleys, Thing made a dismissive wave, clearly unconcerned about the Dursleys' reaction. He gestured for Harry to get dressed. Harry quickly pulled on the least ragged of his hand-me-down clothes, stuffed his precious letter into his pocket, and gathered the few possessions he cared about, a broken toy soldier, a suspicious-looking rock that changed color in different light, and a tattered picture book he'd rescued from Dudley's second bedroom. "What's going to happen?" he asked Thing, who was now keeping time by tapping rhythmically on the door. Instead of answering, Thing suddenly froze, then scurried back to the vent as the entire house began to vibrate. A low, rumbling sound built beneath them, like a subway train approaching, except there was no subway anywhere near Privet Drive. Dust rained from the ceiling of the cupboard. Harry heard Uncle Vernon's startled shout from upstairs, followed by Aunt Petunia's shrill demands to know what was happening. Heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs, passing Harry's cupboard as Vernon rushed to the front door. "What the devil?" Vernon's voice cut off in a strangled gasp. The rumbling stopped abruptly, replaced by an expectant silence. Then, the most peculiar sound Harry had ever heard, the musical chiming of a doorbell that seemed to play a funeral dirge. Who could that be at this hour? Petunia hissed from the stairway. "I don't know," Vernon growled, "but I'll send them packing." Harry heard the front door open, followed by Vernon's blustering voice, "Now see here, it's the middle of the night and decent people." Whatever Vernon was about to say died in his throat. Harry pressed his ear against the cupboard door, straining to hear. "Good evening," proclaimed an enthusiastic male voice with a slight accent Harry couldn't place. "Gomez Addams, at your service. This vision of loveliness is my wife, Morticia." Charmed, purred a female voice that somehow made Harry think of midnight and moonlight. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd drop by," the man continued cheerfully. "We've heard so much about your little family arrangement." What?" Vernon sputtered. "May we come in?" the woman asked in a tone that wasn't really a question. "Absolutely not." Vernon finally found his voice. "Do you have any idea what time it is? Who are you people? How dare you?" "Oh, we dare many things," the woman interrupted smoothly. "It's something of a family tradition." "Vernon?" Petunia called nervously. "Who is it?" "No one, pet." Vernon shouted back. "Just some freaks trying to sell something. They're leaving." "Freaks," the man repeated, his voice suddenly losing its jovial quality. "Did you hear that, Tish? He called us freaks." "I heard, darling," the woman replied. "How refreshing. Most people lack the courage to be so direct." "Listen here," Vernon growled, "I'm going to count to 3, and if you're not off my property rights," the man chuckled. "A relatively modern concept, wouldn't you say, Tish? The ancient law of hospitality, however, dates back millennia. And we've come such a long way to meet your nephew." A moment of stunned silence followed. "What nephew?" Vernon demanded, but his voice had risen an octave. "There's no nephew here." Harry's heart pounded against his ribs. They had come for him, just as Thing had promised. But who were these people? What did they want with him? "Come now," the woman said, her voice silky with danger. "Let's not play games. We're here to see Harry Potter." "You're one of them." Petunia shrieked, apparently having crept closer to the door. "You're one of her kind." "Her kind?" the woman repeated. "If you mean magical, then yes, though not exactly the same variety. Addams' magic is distinctive. We're not interested." Vernon bellowed. "The boy's not going to that school. We swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to all this nonsense." "Took him in," the man echoed, his voice hardening further. "Interesting choice of words for a blood relative. And what nonsense might you be referring to?" "His freakishness." Vernon spat. "Just like his parents." "Well, we won't have it. He'll be normal if I have to beat it out of him." The temperature in the house seemed to drop several degrees. When the woman spoke again, her voice carried the chill of an open grave. "Beat it out of him? Did I hear you correctly?" Harry winced, knowing Uncle Vernon had said exactly the wrong thing. The lock on his cupboard suddenly clicked open of its own accord. Harry pushed the door cautiously, peering out into the hallway. The front door was open, framing two of the strangest people Harry had ever seen. The man wore a pinstriped suit that seemed from another era, his hair slicked back and a thin mustache adorning his upper lip. He twirled a cigar between his fingers, his dark eyes glittering dangerously. Beside him stood a woman of unearthly beauty, her skin pale as moonlight, her black dress flowing around her like living shadow. Her nails were painted blood red, matching her lipstick, and her long black hair cascaded down her back. Behind Vernon, Aunt Petunia clutched her bathrobe close, her horse-like face contorted with fear. Dudley peeked around the corner of the stairwell, his multiple chins quivering. "Ah," the man exclaimed, spotting Harry. "There he is. The man of the hour." All eyes turned to Harry, who froze like a deer in headlights. "Harry Potter," the woman said softly, her gaze both warm and assessing. "You look so much like your mother around the eyes." "You knew my mother?" Harry asked, finding his voice. "Not personally," the woman replied, "but my mother-in-law did. She was family, of a sort." "Nonsense!" Petunia snapped. "Lily had no family besides me. And these people are certainly not related to us." She spat the word people as if it tasted foul. "Family comes in many forms, doesn't it?" the man named Gomez said, his eyes never leaving Harry. "Blood, marriage, choice, magic, all create bonds. The Addams family tree has many strange and twisted branches. Get back in your cupboard, boy," Vernon ordered, his face purpling. "Cupboard?" Gomez's eyebrows shot up. "Did you say cupboard?" Before Vernon could respond, Thing emerged from Harry's sleeve and scampered across the floor to the Addams couple, climbing up Gomez's leg to perch on his shoulder. "Thing!" Gomez greeted him joyfully. "Excellent reconnaissance work. Report." Thing began signing rapidly. Gomez's expression darkened with each gesture, while Morticia's eyes grew colder. "I see," Gomez said finally. "Most illuminating. What's that thing doing back here?" Vernon demanded, pointing a trembling finger at the hand. "I thought I'd driven it off." "Thing is a valued member of our household," Morticia corrected him. "And he's shared some rather disturbing observations about your caregiving methods." "Now see here," Vernon began, but Gomez cut him off. "No, you see here, Dursley," he said, all joviality gone from his voice. "We came expecting eccentricity, we Addamses appreciate unconventional child-rearing, but what Thing describes goes beyond the pale. A cupboard? Starvation? Verbal abuse? How we raise the boy is none of your business." Vernon blustered, though he took a step back. "Actually, it became our business the moment we discovered his connection to our family," Morticia corrected. "And it became even more our business when Thing reported your treatment of him. The Addams family protects its own. He's not one of yours." Petunia interjected, her voice shrill. "He's my sister's son." "Ah, but your sister had connections to our family," Gomez replied. "Distant, perhaps, but magic recognizes magic. Why do you think your anti-magic protections failed so spectacularly? They were never designed to keep out our kind of power." Harry watched this exchange with growing amazement. These strange people were standing up to the Dursleys, for him. No one had ever done that before. "What do you want?" Vernon demanded, visibly deflating. "To see the boy," Morticia said simply. "To ensure he receives his proper education. To make certain he understands his heritage, both magical and familial." "You can't take him," Petunia said suddenly. "There are protections. Arrangements. He has to stay here." Gomez and Morticia exchanged a glance. "We're aware of Dumbledore's blood wards," Morticia said coolly. "A clever bit of magic, if somewhat crude compared to our family protections. We have no intention of permanently removing Harry from your home, yet. The last word carried a distinct threat. Then what? Vernon asked suspiciously. We'll be moving in next door, Gomez announced cheerfully. Number 6, Privet Drive just became available, did you know? Charming property, though it needs a few cobwebs and perhaps a resident ghost to feel like home. What? The Dursleys chorused in horror. Temporarily, of course, Morticia assured them. Just until Harry's school arrangements are finalized. We'll want to oversee his introduction to the wizarding world personally. You can't. Petunia looked ready to faint. The neighbors will find us delightful, Gomez finished for her. Addamses are known for their hospitality. We'll be hosting a housewarming séance this weekend, you're all invited, of course. Vernon's face cycled through several colors before settling on a mottled gray. This is madness. You can't just move in next door. That house isn't even for sale. It is now, Gomez shrugged. Money talks, Dursley. And Addams' money positively shrieks. Throughout this conversation, Harry had remained frozen in the hallway, trying to process what was happening. These bizarre people, the Addamses, were somehow connected to his mother. They knew about magic, about Hogwarts, and they seemed determined to help him. It was too much to believe. Excuse me, he finally said, his voice small but steady. But, who exactly are you? And what do you want with me? Gomez turned to him, his face softening. My apologies, my boy. In all the excitement, proper introductions were neglected. Gomez Addams, at your service. He swept into a dramatic bow. This vision of elegant decay is my wife, Morticia. Hello, Harry, Morticia said warmly. We've been looking forward to meeting you. But why? Harry pressed. I don't understand any of this. First thing with the letter, now you talking about moving next door. All will be explained, Morticia assured him. But perhaps not on your relative's doorstep at midnight. Would you like to come see your new neighbor's home? It's quite empty at the moment, but we brought a few essentials to make it livable. He's not going anywhere. Vernon declared, making a grab for Harry's arm. In a movement almost too fast to follow, Thing leaped from Gomez's shoulder and delivered a stinging slap to Vernon's outstretched hand. Vernon yelped and recoiled. I don't think Harry's uncle is feeling hospitable, Querida, Gomez observed. Perhaps we should continue this discussion tomorrow, after everyone has had a chance to adjust to the new situation. A wise suggestion, mon cher, Morticia agreed. She turned to Harry. We'll return in the morning, Harry. Perhaps you'd join us for breakfast. Grandmama makes an exceptional eye of newt omelette. Eye of newt? Harry repeated weakly. An acquired taste, Gomez admitted with a wink. But we can start you with something more conventional if you prefer. Breakfast at 8. Harry glanced at the Dursleys, who stood huddled together in speechless horror. I'd like that. Excellent. Gomez beamed. Until tomorrow, then. Come, Thing, we have much to prepare. Thing saluted Harry before scurrying back to Gomez, who offered his arm to Morticia. With a final nod to the Dursleys, the strange couple turned and walked down the garden path, disappearing into the darkness. For several long moments, no one in the Dursley household moved or spoke. Then Vernon slammed the door shut, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the locks. Vernon, Petunia whispered, her face ashen. What are we going to do? If they move in next door, if the neighbors see them, if they find out about his abnormality. Vernon rounded on Harry, his small eyes bulging. This is your fault. Somehow, this is all your fault. For once, Harry didn't cower. Something about meeting the Addamses had kindled a small flame of courage in his chest. I didn't ask them to come. I didn't even know they existed until tonight. Don't you talk back to me, boy. Vernon raised his hand threateningly. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Harry said quietly. Thing might see. And tell them. Vernon's hand froze mid-air. His eyes darted around the hallway as if expecting the disembodied hand to materialize at any moment. Slowly, he lowered his arm. Go to your cupboard, he muttered. We'll deal with this in the morning. Harry returned to his cupboard without argument, but for the first time in his life, he closed the door with a sense of anticipation rather than resignation. Whatever tomorrow brought, it had to be better than the life he'd known so far. As he settled onto his thin mattress, a soft scratching came from the vent. Harry looked up to see Thing peeking in at him. You came back, Harry whispered, surprised. Thing gave him a thumbs up, then made a series of gestures that Harry interpreted as reassurance. Will they really help me go to Hogwarts? Harry asked. Thing nodded enthusiastically. And they really knew my mother. She was connected to your family. Thing made a so gesture, then traced letters in the air, distant cousin. Magic family. I have magical family, Harry breathed, the concept both foreign and wonderful. Not just the Dursleys. Thing patted Harry's knee comfortingly, then pointed at the ceiling and made a sleeping gesture. You're right, I should sleep, Harry agreed. Big day tomorrow. Thing waved goodbye and disappeared back through the vent. Harry lay down, his mind spinning with the night's events. For the first time since he could remember, he fell asleep smiling, dreaming not of escape but of possibility. While the Dursley household fell into an uneasy silence, number 6, Privet Drive pulsed with activity. The previously vacant house, whose owners had mysteriously received an offer of 3 times the property's value that very evening, was undergoing a transformation that defied both physics and local zoning regulations. Inside, space expanded improbably. Rooms that hadn't existed before unfolded like origami, creating a labyrinthine interior that bore little resemblance to the cookie-cutter floor plan of the original house. The basement deepened to accommodate Grandmama's cauldron collection. The attic stretched upward, developing curious angles and shadows perfect for lurking. In the master bedroom, Lurch assembled a massive mahogany bed, its 4 posts carved with writhing serpents. Will this do? He rumbled to Morticia, who was directing the placement of black velvet curtains over the previously floral-patterned windows. It will suffice temporarily, she replied, critically eyeing the cheerful beige walls. Tomorrow we'll need to apply the mold culture I brought. This room needs to breathe. Downstairs, Gomez was on his hands and knees in the living room, carefully releasing a family of spiders from an ornate silver box. There you go, my 8-legged friends, he encouraged as they scurried into the corners. Make yourselves at home. Web security is our top priority. In the kitchen, Grandmama unpacked her traveling apothecary, muttering disapprovingly at the electric stove. Not even a proper fire pit. How am I supposed to brew anything substantial on this contraption? We'll manage, Mother, Morticia assured her, gliding into the room. This is only temporary, just long enough to ensure Harry receives his proper introduction to our world. And if Dumbledore objects? Grandmama asked, expertly chopping something that still appeared to be moving on her cutting board. Let him, Gomez declared, entering with Wednesday and Pugsley in tow. The old wizard may have his plans, but they clearly haven't accounted for the boy's welfare. Did you see him, Tish? Thin as a wraith. Clothes like a beggar. Living in a cupboard. I think the cupboard sounds cozy, Wednesday commented, her face expressionless. But it should be his choice to live there, not a punishment. Exactly, my brilliant little ghoul. Gomez scooped her up, planting a kiss on her forehead. Freedom to choose one's own confinement, that's the Addams way. Can I show Harry my new explosives tomorrow? Pugsley asked hopefully. I've been working on a formula that creates green smoke in the shape of skulls. Perhaps start with something less intimidating, dear, Morticia suggested. Remember, Harry hasn't been raised to appreciate our family's unique interests. Festus arriving tomorrow with the rest of our essentials, Gomez informed them, consulting a pocket watch that appeared to run backward. And I've sent a telegram to cousin ITT. If anyone can help untangle the legal complications around the boy's guardianship, it's ITT. Do we intend to seek guardianship? Morticia asked, arching a perfect eyebrow. If necessary, Gomez replied, suddenly serious. Those Dursleys are the worst sort of normal people, Tish. Cruelty without creativity. Abuse without appreciation. Suffering without purpose. He spat the last words as if they were poison. And what of Dumbledore's plans? Grandmama interjected. The blood wards. The prophecy. We'll cross that haunted bridge when we come to it, Gomez waved dismissively. For now, we focus on the boy. He needs proper clothing, proper food, proper education about his heritage, both magical and familial. And friends, Wednesday added quietly. He needs friends. Everyone turned to look at the solemn little girl, surprised by the sentiment. Wednesday, darling, how thoughtful, Morticia smiled. Would you like to be Harry's friend? Wednesday considered the question with grave seriousness. I've never had a friend who wasn't dead, imaginary, or related to me. It might be an interesting experiment. That's the spirit. Gomez encouraged. Scientific inquiry is the foundation of all worthwhile relationships. A soft scuttling announced things' return. He leaped onto the kitchen table, signing rapidly. The boy is settled for the night, Morticia translated. The Dursleys are in disarray, arguing about what to do. Let them stew. Grandmama cackled, stirring something green and bubbling in a small cauldron she'd set up on the stove. By morning, my special welcome brew will be ready. One sip, and they'll be much more accommodating. Mother, Morticia warned, we agreed, no permanent transformations while we're in the Muggle neighborhood. Who said anything about permanent? Grandmama winked. Just a little attitude adjustment potion. Wears off in a week, or a month, depending on their inherent stubbornness. Thing tapped insistently on the table, signing a new message. Visitors? Gomez translated, suddenly alert. Where? Thing pointed toward the back of the house. Ah! The wizarding welcome wagon arrives. Gomez rubbed his hands together gleefully. Right on schedule. The family moved as one to the back garden, which had already sprouted several varieties of carnivorous plants and a small pet cemetery for future use. There, standing at the garden gate with a pink umbrella clutched in his massive hands, stood the largest man Harry had ever seen. Hagrid, I presume. Gomez stepped forward, hand extended. Gomez Addams. We've been expecting you. Hagrid blinked in confusion, his bushy beard twitching. Yeah, have? But how did the Addams family is always prepared for company, expected or otherwise, Morticia explained smoothly. Do come in. We were just discussing young Harry's future. That's why I'm here, Hagrid said, ducking to fit through the gate. Dumbledore sent me to deliver Harry's letter, but something's interferin' with the owl post. Then he got word of you lot turnin' up. No offense meant, he added hastily. None taken, Gomez assured him. Interference is our specialty. Come, let's discuss this over drinks. Grandmama was just brewing up something special. As they ushered the bewildered groundskeeper into their temporarily transformed home, Morticia caught Gomez's arm. Darling, she murmured, do you think we're doing the right thing? Interfering with Dumbledore's plans for the boy? Gomez kissed her hand fervently. Tish, when have the Addamses ever concerned themselves with right by conventional standards? We follow the ancient ways, family, blood, and chaos. True, Morticia smiled. And Harry is family, however distant the connection. Precisely. Gomez declared. By this time tomorrow, young Harry Potter will have his first taste of real freedom, the freedom to be as strange, as magical, as wonderfully bizarre as he was born to be. Inside the house, Hagrid's booming laugh mingled with Grandmama's cackling and Wednesday's solemn observations about the optimal temperature for preserving severed limbs. The strange sounds drifted across Privet Drive, slipping through Harry's vent to soothe him with the promise of belonging. For the first time in 10 years, the boy who lived dreamed not of escape, but of home. Chapter 2, When Darkness Meets Normality. Harry woke to the sound of Aunt Petunia's knuckles rapping frantically on his cupboard door. Up! Get up now! She hissed, her voice pitched higher than usual. Kitchen. 5 minutes. Harry blinked away sleep, momentarily confused until memories of the previous night came rushing back. The Addamses. Thing. The promise of breakfast at 8. He fumbled for his glasses and checked Dudley's old watch with the cracked face. 7:15 a.m. The Dursleys never woke him this early on summer holidays. When Harry entered the kitchen, he found all 3 Dursleys already dressed in their Sunday best, Vernon in a suit that strained against his girth, Petunia in a floral dress with a string of pearls, and Dudley uncomfortably stuffed into a blue blazer. Sit, Vernon commanded, his mustache twitching nervously. We need to talk. Harry sat cautiously, noting the untouched breakfast spread on the table, far more elaborate than their usual morning fare. Those people, from last night, Vernon began, clearly struggling to maintain composure. They are not normal. Really? Harry couldn't help the sarcasm. The disembodied hand didn't give that away. Vernon's face purpled, but Petunia placed a restraining hand on his arm. Listen to me, boy, she said, her voice unnaturally controlled. These people are dangerous. More dangerous than your kind usually are. Harry raised an eyebrow. My kind? Wizards, she spat, lowering her voice as if afraid the neighbors might hear through the walls. But these Addams people, they're something else entirely. Something worse. How would you know? Harry asked. Petunia's lips thinned to nearly nothing. My sister mentioned them once. Just once. Even she seemed afraid of them. That caught Harry's attention. My mother knew them. Her freakish grandmother had some connection to their family, Petunia admitted reluctantly. Lily visited them once, before you were born. She came back, different. More confident in her abnormality. The last word dripped with resentment. Vernon cleared his throat importantly. The point is, boy, you are not to go to their house. You are not to speak to them. You are to have nothing whatsoever to do with these people. Is that understood? Harry looked between his aunt and uncle, noting the unusual combination of fear and determination in their expressions. They said they're moving in next door, Harry pointed out. And they invited me to breakfast. We will handle them, Vernon declared, puffing up his chest. I've already called the neighborhood association. There are codes, regulations. No one just moves in overnight without proper paperwork. As if summoned by Vernon's words, the doorbell rang, not the usual electric buzz, but the same funeral dirge Harry had heard the night before. All 4 Dursleys jumped. How did they? Vernon spluttered. They must have changed our doorbell, Petunia whispered, horrified. The bell played its mournful tune again. Vernon squared his shoulders, adjusted his tie, and marched to the front door with the air of a man walking to his execution. The others trailed behind, curiosity overcoming fear. Vernon flung the door open to reveal Gomez Addams, resplendent in another pinstriped suit, beaming on their doorstep. Beside him stood a girl about Harry's age, wearing a black dress with a white collar that made her look like she'd stepped out of a Victorian funeral parlor. Her skin was nearly as pale as paper, her dark hair pulled into tight braids, and her expression suggested she found the world perpetually disappointing. Good morning, neighbor. Gomez greeted, unaffected by Vernon's glower. Lovely day for a neighborly chat, isn't it? Allow me to introduce my daughter, Wednesday. She was so excited to meet young Harry that she insisted on coming to escort him to breakfast personally. The girl, Wednesday, didn't look excited. She stared at the Dursleys with flat, assessing eyes. "Your house is very symmetrical," she observed, making it sound like a terminal diagnosis. "See here," Vernon blustered, "we didn't agree to any breakfast. The boy isn't going anywhere." "Not going?" Gomez looked genuinely puzzled. "But we've prepared a feast. Grandmama's been cooking since dawn, eye of newt omelets, vulture egg soufflés, toasted tarantula legs with marmalade." Dudley made a choking sound. Petunia pressed a hand to her mouth. "It's a joke, Father," Wednesday said flatly. "They don't appreciate our cuisine." She turned to Harry. "Don't worry. Mother made normal food for you. She says we need to ease you in gradually." "He's not going," Vernon repeated, his face darkening. Gomez's smile remained fixed, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Mr. Dursley, I'm sure we can be reasonable about this. After all, it's just breakfast. Harry will be back before you know it." "I said no. I want to go," Harry spoke up, surprising himself with his boldness. All eyes turned to him. Vernon's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little, Uncle Vernon," Harry interrupted, "if I don't go, they might stay longer. Talk to the neighbors. Maybe invite them all over to meet the family that just moved in." Vernon froze, processing the thinly veiled threat. The Dursleys' obsession with appearances was their greatest weakness, and Harry had just exploited it perfectly. "Fine," Vernon growled after a moment. "Be back by 9. And you," he jabbed a finger toward Gomez, "no funny business." "Funny business is our specialty," Wednesday deadpanned. Before Vernon could retract his permission, Harry slipped past him onto the porch. Gomez clapped him on the shoulder, and Wednesday gave him a nod that might have contained a fraction of approval. "We'll return him in one piece," Gomez promised as they turned to leave. "Or reasonable facsimile thereof." The door slammed behind them with such force that the new doorbell played its dirge again. Harry walked between Gomez and Wednesday, acutely aware of his baggy hand-me-downs and untidy hair. The contrast between himself and the immaculately dressed Addamses couldn't have been more stark. "Sorry about my clothes," he mumbled, embarrassed. "What?" Gomez looked genuinely confused. "Oh. Don't give it a thought, my boy. In the Addams family, we judge people by the quality of their suffering, not their attire. Though both could use improvement," Wednesday added. "Mother packed some clothes for you. Cousin Itt was about your size, a century ago." Before Harry could process that statement, they reached number 6, Privet Drive, and his jaw dropped. Overnight, the house had transformed. While maintaining the same basic structure as the other homes on the street, subtle yet disturbing differences made it stand out like a gargoyle at a garden party. The previously manicured lawn now featured twisted, black-leaved plants arranged in what appeared to be a pentagram. The cheerful yellow paint had somehow been replaced with a weathered gray that made the house look centuries older than its neighbors. Gargoyles perched on the roof, and was that smoke coming from the chimney in the middle of summer? "Home sweet home," Gomez declared proudly. "Temporary accommodations, of course, but we've made a few homey adjustments." "The neighbors are already complaining," Wednesday informed Harry. "Mrs. Number 8 called the police about Grandmama's midnight naked moon dance in the front yard." "Ah, but they couldn't find a specific ordinance against it." Gomez chuckled. "Rule of law, my dear boy. Always find the loophole." Inside, the transformation was even more dramatic. The formerly beige walls now featured dark wood paneling and ornate, slightly menacing portraits of people who all shared the same sunken-eyed, cadaverous appearance. Cobwebs draped artfully from crystal chandeliers that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. The air smelled of exotic spices, gunpowder, and something Harry couldn't identify, but that made the hairs on his neck stand up. "Morticia. We've returned with our guest," Gomez called. From the kitchen emerged the elegant woman from the previous night, still clad entirely in black, her dress seeming to flow rather than hang. Behind her trailed a boy about Dudley's age but far more solidly built, his round face alight with mischievous energy. He held what appeared to be a small stick of dynamite. "Harry," Morticia glided forward, taking his hand in her cool grasp. "Welcome to our home. I'm so pleased you could join us for breakfast." "Thank you for inviting me," Harry replied awkwardly. "This is our son, Pugsley," she indicated the boy, who grinned and waved his explosive device enthusiastically. "Wanna see something cool later?" Pugsley asked. "I've been working on a new detonator design." Before Harry could answer, another figure entered, an ancient woman with wild grey hair that stuck out in all directions. She wore layers of colorful shawls and a necklace made of what appeared to be animal teeth. "So this is Lily's boy," the old woman exclaimed, rushing forward to grasp Harry's chin, turning his face this way and that. Yes, I see it now. The eyes, of course, but also that touch of power around the edges. Skinny though, much too skinny. Good thing I made extra spider egg soufflé." "Grandmama, please," Morticia gently intervened. "Harry isn't accustomed to our ways yet. We agreed on conventional food for his first visit." "Conventional," Grandmama snorted. "Where's the fun in that? In my day, children had strong stomachs. They ate whatever crawled onto their plates and were grateful." "Perhaps we could save the culinary adventures for his next visit," Gomez suggested diplomatically. A deep, resonant UHHNNGH announced the arrival of the tallest, most cadaverous man Harry had ever seen. He wore a butler's uniform and moved with stiff precision. "Ah, Lurch." Gomez beamed. "Harry, this is Lurch, our butler and dear friend." "You rang?" Lurch intoned, looking at Harry with sunken eyes. "No, but excellent anticipation." Gomez clapped him on the arm. "Breakfast ready?" "Served, in the dining room." Harry followed the bizarre family through a doorway that seemed to stretch as they approached it. The dining room contained a massive table that could have seated 20, though only 8 places were set. The chairs were high-backed and carved with symbols that made Harry's eyes hurt if he looked at them too long. "Please, sit beside me," Wednesday instructed, taking a chair and pointing to the one next to it. Harry sat, finding the chair surprisingly comfortable despite its forbidding appearance. Gomez took the head of the table, with Morticia to his right. Grandmama sat across from Harry, eyeing him with keen interest, while Pugsley plopped down beside her, still fiddling with his explosive. "We're still missing one," Morticia observed. "Fester should have arrived by now." As if on cue, a crash came from upstairs, followed by a series of thumps that sounded like someone rolling down the stairs. Moments later, a bald man with sunken eyes and a wild grin burst into the dining room, his black coat smoldering slightly. "Sorry I'm late," he announced. "Took a wrong turn at the chimney. These British fireplaces are narrower than ours." "Fester, old man." Gomez jumped up to embrace the newcomer. "Glad you made it. Harry, this is my brother, Fester Addams." Fester turned to Harry, his maniacal grin widening further. "So you're the wizard boy. Got a lightning bolt on your head and everything. Can I touch it? Is it electrified? Does it conduct current?" "Uncle Fester," Wednesday interrupted, "we agreed to ease Harry into our peculiarities." Right, Fester nodded, taking a seat. "Start normal, get weird later." "Got it." Lurch began serving breakfast. To Harry's relief, his plate contained normal-looking eggs, bacon, and toast, though he noticed the others received much stranger fare. Grandmama's plate seemed to be moving. "So, Harry," Gomez began, slicing into something purple that oozed blue liquid, "tell us about yourself." "Thing has shared the basics, of course, but we want to hear from you directly." Harry shifted uncomfortably. "There's not much to tell. I live with the Dursleys. I didn't know about magic until your letter came. I didn't even know how my parents really died. Morticia interrupted, arching an eyebrow. What were you told? Car crash, Harry replied, stabbing at his eggs. A collective gasp went around the table. Car crash. Fester exclaimed. James and Lily Potter. In a car crash. That's like saying Attila the Hun died from a paper cut. The Dursleys lied to you, Morticia said gently. Your parents were murdered by a powerful dark wizard, Lord Voldemort. Another gasp, this time from the doorway, where Hagrid now stood, ducking to avoid hitting his head on the ceiling. Yeah, shouldn't say the name, he admonished, squeezing into the dining room. Nonsense. Gomez declared. In the Addams family, we name our fears directly, then invite them to dinner. Join us, Hagrid, Morticia gestured to an empty chair that suddenly expanded to accommodate his frame. We were just explaining to Harry about his parents' true fate. Hagrid looked uncomfortable but sat down, the chair creaking ominously beneath him. I was supposed to tell him all this myself. Dumbledore's orders. Well, I want to know everything, Harry said firmly, surprising himself again with his boldness. About my parents, about this Voldemort person, about why I was left with people who hate me. Hate is a strong word, Morticia observed. Though in this case, possibly accurate. Hagrid sighed heavily. It's a long story, Harry. Yeah, parents were good people, the best. Fought against you-know-who when most were too scared. And when he came after them, well, he killed them, but somehow couldn't kill you. That's how you got that scar. Only person ever to survive the killing curse. That's why you're famous in the wizarding world, Wednesday added matter-of-factly. The boy who lived. Harry nearly dropped his fork. Famous? Me? Oh yes, Gomez nodded enthusiastically. Quite the celebrity. Books written about you, theories debated, merchandise sold, though I doubt you've seen a Canute of the royalties. We should look into that, get our lawyers involved. But if I'm so famous, why was I left with the Dursleys? Why didn't some wizard family take me in? An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Hagrid fidgeted with a sausage the size of a small log that Lurch had placed before him. That, Morticia said delicately, is a question with complex answers. Dumbledore believed you would be safest with blood relatives. There are magical protections tied to your aunt's blood connection to your mother. Fat lot of good that does me when they lock me in a cupboard and starve me, Harry muttered. Hagrid's fork clattered to his plate. They did what? The boy sleeps in a cupboard under the stairs, Grandmama informed him, her ancient eyes flashing. Wears rags. Gets table scraps while his cousin grows to the size of a small elephant. I didn't. Dumbledore never said. Hagrid looked stricken. Precisely why we've intervened, Gomez declared. Blood protection is all well and good, but what's the point of being safe from dark wizards if you're being destroyed from within by your so-called family? Dumbledore must have his reasons, Hagrid said, though he sounded uncertain. Adults often have reasons, Wednesday told Harry. That doesn't make them good ones. Harry found himself warming to the strange girl beside him. Despite her deadpan delivery and morbid appearance, there was something refreshingly honest about her. So what happens now? He asked. The letter said I'm accepted to Hogwarts, but I don't know how to get there, or how to buy all those supplies, or how to pay for any of it. That's why I'm here, Hagrid said, regaining some confidence. I'm to take you to Diagon Alley, wizard shopping district in London. Get your supplies, visit Gringotts Bank. Your parents left you money, don't worry about that. We'll join you, of course, Morticia stated rather than asked. As Harry's distant relations, we have an interest in his proper introduction to magical society. Hagrid looked ready to object, then seemed to think better of it. I suppose that would be all right. More the merrier, eh? Splendid. Gomez clapped his hands. A family outing. We haven't been to Diagon Alley in decades. I wonder if that charming shop that sold cursed music boxes is still there. Can I come too? Wednesday asked her mother. I want to see the apothecary. Of course, darling. You and Pugsley both. Wicked, Pugsley grinned. I'm running low on nude eyes for my explosives. Harry's head was spinning. In the space of 24 hours, his life had completely transformed. From lonely prisoner in a cupboard to breakfast with a family that made the concept of strange seem inadequate. From believing he was a burden with no future to learning he was famous, with money, and destined to attend a school for magic. There's something else you should know, Harry, Hagrid said seriously, pulling a slightly squashed envelope from one of his many coat pockets. Got this from Dumbledore last night, after I told him about the Addamses being here. Harry accepted the envelope, breaking the seal to find a letter written in the same emerald ink as his Hogwarts acceptance. Dear Harry, I understand you have met the Addams family. While they are certainly unusual, they are not your enemies. However, I must caution you about becoming too deeply involved with them before you have had a chance to learn about the wizarding world properly. The protections I placed around you at your aunt's home are vital to your safety. While the Addams family has their own powerful magic, it is not a substitute for the blood wards that have kept you safe these 10 years. I look forward to meeting you at Hogwarts, where we can discuss these matters more fully. Until then, please exercise caution and remember that not everything that seems friendly truly has your best interests at heart. Yours sincerely, Albus Dumbledore. Harry frowned, looking up from the letter. He's warning me against you, he said to Gomez. But you've shown me more kindness in one day than the Dursleys have in 10 years. Dumbledore is a wise man, Morticia said carefully. But wisdom sometimes blinds one to the simpler truths. He sees the grand design, the cosmic chess game, but misses the child suffering in a cupboard. We're not trying to replace your wizard education, my boy. Gomez assured him. Hogwarts is a fine institution, bit lacking in the darker arts, perhaps, but solid fundamentals. We simply want to ensure you're treated properly in the meantime. And if we happen to introduce you to some Addams family traditions along the way, Grandmama added with a wink, well, that's just bonus education. Harry felt something brush against his leg and looked down to see things scurrying across the floor, carrying a small package. The hand climbed nimbly onto Harry's lap and presented the gift with a flourish. For me? Harry asked, surprised. Thing nodded vigorously. Harry unwrapped the package to find a small silver object about the size of a pocket watch. It was intricately engraved with symbols similar to those on the dining chairs. An Addams family emergency beacon, Gomez explained proudly. Centuries old, passed down through generations. If you're ever in real danger, simply press the center 3 times, and the nearest Addams will be compelled to come to your aid. It's a family heirloom, Morticia added. We don't share them lightly. Harry stared at the object, deeply touched. I can't accept this. It's too valuable. Nonsense. Gomez waved dismissively. What's the point of heirlooms if they're not being used to protect family? Besides, it's just a loan until you learn to defend yourself properly. We Addamses take care of our own, Grandmama said firmly. No matter how distant the connection. Thank you, Harry managed, his voice thick with emotion. He carefully tucked the device into his pocket, trying to ignore the suspicious moisture gathering in his eyes. Before the moment could become too sentimental, a series of outraged shouts erupted from outside. Gomez bounded to the window, his face lighting up with delight. The neighbors have organized a protest, he announced gleefully. Look at them, Tish. With picket signs and everything. The entire Addams family rushed to look, Harry following curiously. Sure enough, a group of about 20 Privet Drive residents had gathered on the sidewalk in front of the house, holding hastily made signs with slogans like, Maintain Property Standards, and, No Gargoyles in Our Neighborhood. Leading the charge, his face purple with righteous indignation, was Uncle Vernon. Oh, This is too delicious. Gomez rubbed his hands together. A proper welcome. Lurch, fetch the boiling oil, we'll give them a traditional Addams greeting. Darling, Morticia placed a restraining hand on his arm, remember our discussion about maintaining a low profile? For Harry's sake. Gomez deflated slightly. You're right, of course, Querida. But surely we can offer some modest hospitality? I suppose a small display wouldn't hurt, Morticia conceded. Pugsley, fetch your smallest explosives. Wednesday, release the tarantulas from the guest bathroom. Fester, perhaps a small electrical demonstration. On it. Fester grinned, rubbing his hands together until sparks literally flew from his fingertips. Harry watched in amazement as the family mobilized with practiced efficiency. Hagrid looked concerned but made no move to stop them. Shouldn't we? I don't know, try to calm things down. Harry suggested tentatively. Calm. Gomez looked genuinely puzzled. My dear boy, where's the fun in calm? Besides, how else will your relatives learn to respect boundaries if not through a healthy dose of terror? Put that way, Harry couldn't really argue. After years of being bullied by the Dursleys, the idea of someone finally standing up to them, even in this bizarre fashion, was oddly satisfying. The front door flew open with dramatic force, revealing Gomez in all his manic glory, arms spread wide in welcome. Neighbors, he boomed. What a delightful surprise. Have you come for the housewarming? I'm afraid the séance isn't scheduled until tonight, but we can certainly improvise. Vernon pushed to the front of the crowd, brandishing a sheet of paper. See here, Addams. We've got the Neighborhood Association bylaws. Article 7 clearly states no architectural modifications without committee approval. Those gargoyles have to go. Gargoyles? Gomez affected shock. My dear man, those aren't gargoyles. They're family members. Distant cousins, turned to stone in the 14th century by a minor disagreement with a witch. We couldn't possibly remove them, it would be most disrespectful to the dead. He paused thoughtfully. Well, the mostly dead. The crowd murmured uneasily. Vernon's face darkened further. And what about that pentagram on your lawn, demanded Mrs. Number 8, a pinch-faced woman clutching a small dog that growled continuously. A garden design, Morticia glided forward to stand beside her husband. Inspired by ancient geometric principles. I assure you, any resemblance to occult symbols is purely intentional. This candid admission seemed to throw the protesters off balance. Before they could rally, a small explosion erupted from a nearby bush, sending green smoke in the shape of a skull wafting over the crowd. Several women screamed. Pugsley, darling, Morticia called without turning around, what have we said about detonations before noon? Only with proper supervision. Pugsley's voice came from somewhere in the shrubbery. Very good, Morticia nodded approvingly. Wednesday appeared at the door, her expression unchanged despite the chaos. The tarantulas have been released, Mother. 17 of them. The 18th wanted to stay behind and finish molting. A fresh wave of screams rose from the crowd as people began frantically checking their clothing and hair. The small dog broke free from its owner and ran yapping down the street. Now see here, Vernon began, but his words died as Fester stepped forward, electricity visibly arcing between his ears. You folks seem tense, Fester observed with his unnerving grin. How about a little shock therapy? Always works for me. He touched a nearby metal mailbox, which immediately shot sparks in all directions. The crowd began to disperse rapidly, dignity forgotten in the face of escaped tarantulas and electrical anomalies. Vernon stood his ground, though his face had lost some of its color. This isn't over, Addams. The authorities will hear about this. Health and safety violations. Electrical code infractions. Exotic pet restrictions. Exotic? Grandmama cackled, appearing in the doorway. Honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till my Bulgarian man-eating Venus flytraps reach maturity. That proved too much for Vernon, who finally backed away, nearly tripping over his own feet. You stay away from my family, he shouted. And keep the boy if you want him. Good riddance. Harry, who had been watching from the window, felt a strange mix of emotions at his uncle's words. There was hurt, certainly, being so easily discarded stung even when it was by people he disliked. But there was also a bubbling sense of something like freedom. If the Dursleys wanted nothing to do with him, perhaps he could stay with the Addamses until school started. Bizarre as they were, they seemed to genuinely care about his welfare. As the last of the protesters scattered, the Addams family returned inside, laughing and congratulating each other on a successful neighborhood integration. Did you see their faces when the tarantulas appeared? Pugsley guffawed. Classic. The electrical display was inspired. Fester, Gomez clapped his brother on the back. Reminds me of that time in Budapest with the lightning rod and the opera house. Good times, Fester sighed nostalgically. Three sopranos never sang again, but boy, could they dance. Morticia noticed Harry's expression and moved to his side. Are you all right, Harry? I know family confrontations can be distressing. I'm fine, Harry assured her, surprised to find it was mostly true. It's just. Uncle Vernon said they don't want me anymore. And how do you feel about that? Morticia asked, her dark eyes compassionate. Harry considered the question. Relieved, mostly. But also. I don't know. They're horrible, but they're the only family I've known. Family is more than blood, Harry, Morticia said gently. It's about who welcomes your darkness as well as your light. Who embraces your strangeness rather than trying to correct it. Harry nodded, understanding dawning. Like you've done for me. Precisely. Hagrid cleared his throat awkwardly. Not to interrupt, but we should be gettin' to Diagon Alley soon if we want to beat the crowds. Of course. Gomez exclaimed. Adventure awaits. Lurch, bring the car around. Car. Hagrid looked dubious. I was thinking we'd take the night bus. More direct. Nonsense. Gomez waved dismissively. The Addams family travels in style. Besides, I've been dying to test the English road system. They say the M25 is particularly lethal during rush hour. 20 minutes later, Harry found himself squeezed into the back seat of the most improbable vehicle he'd ever seen. The car, if it could be called that, resembled a Victorian hearse crossed with a tank, all gleaming black metal and brass fittings. Despite its apparently modest exterior dimensions, it somehow comfortably accommodated Gomez, Morticia, Grandmama, Wednesday, Pugsley, Fester, Harry, and even Hagrid, though the giant man had to duck his head. Lurch sat at the wheel, his sunken eyes fixed on the road with sepulchral focus. Everybody ready? Gomez called from the front passenger seat. Lurch, take the scenic route. What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating ride of Harry's life. The massive vehicle moved with impossible speed and agility, weaving through London traffic as if other cars were standing still. Occasionally, it seemed to drive directly through solid objects, which Fester cheerfully explained was due to dimensional permeability, whatever that meant. Strangest of all, no one outside the vehicle seemed to notice anything unusual about it. Pedestrians' eyes slid past as if the enormous black conveyance were invisible. Perception filter, Wednesday explained when Harry asked, sitting beside him with perfect composure despite Lurch's death-defying driving. Muggles see what they expect to see, a normal, forgettable car. It's similar to the magic that hides wizarding locations, but older. More instinctive. Are you a witch too? Harry asked. Wednesday considered the question. Not in the wand-waving sense. Addams' magic is different, more primal. We don't so much cast spells as embody them. She held out her hand, and a small blue flame danced across her palm for a moment before extinguishing. I've been practicing. Harry watched, fascinated. Will I learn to do that at Hogwarts? Doubtful. They teach a more structured approach. She made it sound like a limitation. But perhaps I could show you some Addams techniques. If you're interested. Definitely, Harry nodded eagerly. The car screeched to a halt so suddenly that Harry would have been thrown forward if not for the skeletal hand that emerged from the seat to hold him in place. We're here. Gomez announced. The Leaky Cauldron, gateway to Diagon Alley. Harry peered through the window at a shabby-looking pub squeezed between a bookshop and a record store. Like the Addams car, the other pedestrians on the busy street didn't seem to notice it, their gazes sliding from one shop to the next as if the pub didn't exist. Muggles can't see it, Hagrid explained, extricating himself from the vehicle with some difficulty. Magic, see? Fascinating, Morticia observed, emerging with fluid grace. The concealment charms have evolved since our last visit. More subtle, yet somehow less effective. The wizarding world has grown lazy in its isolation, Grandmama sniffed disapprovingly. In my day, magical buildings weren't just invisible, they actively repelled the curious. Gave them boils, made their teeth fall out, turned them into toads, now that's proper security. The group made their way into the pub, which fell silent as they entered. Harry wasn't sure if it was his presence causing the stir or the bizarre family accompanying him, probably both. The barkeep, a bald, toothless man, dropped the glass he was polishing. "Bless my soul," he whispered. "Harry Potter, in my pub." "And the Addams family," Gomez added cheerfully. "Been a while, Tom." "Place looks exactly the same, delightfully decrepit." "The Addamses," Tom repeated, his already pale face whitening further. We haven't seen your kind in these parts for decades." "We've been traveling," Morticia explained smoothly. "America has such fascinating burial grounds." The pub remained eerily silent, its patrons staring wide-eyed at the strange group. Harry shifted uncomfortably as whispers of "Harry Potter" and "The Boy Who Lived" rippled through the room. A pale young man in a purple turban pushed forward, his face twitching nervously. "P.P. Potter," he stammered. "See, can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "Harry, this is Professor Quirrell," Hagrid introduced. "He'll be your defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts." "What an exciting subject," Morticia commented. "Though in our family, we prefer to study dark arts without defense. Much more direct." Quirrell's eye twitched violently. Must be going. Lots of books to buy." He hurried away, giving the Addamses a wide berth. "Curious man," Gomez observed. "Did you notice the smell of garlic, Tish? Haven't seen that level of paranoia since Cousin Crimp became convinced his shadow was plotting against him." He paused thoughtfully. Though to be fair, it was. Hagrid led them through the pub to a small, walled courtyard out back. He pulled out a pink umbrella and tapped a specific brick in the wall 3 times. The brick quivered, then wriggled, then a small hole appeared in the center, growing wider and wider until it formed an archway large enough even for Hagrid to pass through comfortably. "Welcome," Hagrid announced proudly, "to Diagon Alley." Harry gasped as he stepped through the arch. The narrow, cobbled street twisted and turned out of sight, lined with the most fascinating shops he'd ever seen. Cauldrons stacked outside one establishment glinted in the sun, owls of every color peered through the windows of another, strange, silvery instruments whirred and emitted puffs of smoke in yet another. "Gringotts first," Hagrid declared, pointing toward a snowy white building that towered over the other shops. "Wizard Bank. Run by goblins." "Goblins!" Fester exclaimed excitedly. "Love those little guys. Remember when they tried to repossess Great Aunt Temperance for defaulting on that cursed jewelry loan, Gomez? How could I forget? 3 weeks of siege warfare in the East Wing. She turned 6 of them into bookends before they negotiated a settlement. The Addams family swept up the white stone steps of Gringotts, drawing stares from everyone they passed. Harry noticed that the magical community seemed even more unsettled by the Addamses than the Muggles had been, interesting, considering how bizarre many of the witches and wizards looked themselves. A pair of goblins guarded the burnished bronze doors of the bank. They bowed as the group approached, though Harry noticed they kept a wary eye on Grandmama, who winked at them disconcertingly. "Morning," Hagrid nodded to the goblins. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Harry Potter's vault." "And to check on the Addams family vaults," Morticia added smoothly. "It's been some time since we've made a withdrawal." This statement caused a stir among the watching goblins. One rushed forward, bowing deeply. "The Addams family. An unexpected honor. I am Gornick, Senior Accounts Manager. Please, follow me to Director Ragnarok's office immediately." "Oh, that's not necessary," Morticia began, but the goblin was insistent. "The director was explicit, madam. Any Addams appearance is to be treated with the highest priority." They were ushered through opulent marble hallways, past dozens of goblins working at high desks, weighing coins and examining jewels. Finally, they reached an imposing door made of what appeared to be solid gold. Gornick knocked 3 times, and the door swung open silently. "Director," Gornick announced, "the Addams family is here. And Harry Potter." A particularly ancient and dignified goblin looked up from an enormous ledger. His eyes widened momentarily before he composed his features into a neutral expression. "Ah, the Addamses. It has been 97 years, I believe. Has it been that long?" Gomez looked surprised. "Time flies when you're having fun. How's the gold market these days, Ragnarok? Still manipulating Muggle economies to create artificial scarcity?" The goblin's lips thinned. "Our financial strategies are confidential, Mr. Addams. Now, how may Gringotts serve you today?" "Young Harry needs access to his vault," Morticia explained. "And we'd like to review the Addams holdings, ensure everything is in order." "Of course." Ragnarok snapped his fingers, and another goblin appeared instantly. "Griphook will take Mr. Potter to his trust vault. As for the Addams accounts..." He hesitated. "Perhaps we should discuss those privately." "Nonsense." Gomez waved dismissively. "Harry's practically family. No secrets among family, Ragnarok." The goblin looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Very well. The Addams vaults are, as always, our oldest and most unusual holdings. Vault 13 contains the monetary assets, approximately 17 million galleons at last count, though the cursed items within make exact accounting challenging. Vaults 14 through 17 house the artifacts, manuscripts, and specimens. Do you wish to visit any of these today?" Harry tried not to gape at the casual mention of 17 million galleons. Even without knowing the exchange rate to pounds, he could tell this was an astronomical sum. "Perhaps just the main vault," Morticia decided. "We should withdraw some funds for Harry's school supplies and our stay in England." "I can pay for my own supplies," Harry said quickly. "Hagrid said my parents left me money." "Of course you can," Morticia assured him. "But an Addams never passes up an opportunity to spend gold. It's considered unlucky." "Very unlucky," Wednesday agreed solemnly. "Great-Uncle Morbus refused to spend a single coin for 30 years. On the 31st year, he spontaneously turned into a chandelier. Best light fixture we ever had." Fester added cheerfully. Harry wasn't sure if they were joking. With the Addams family, it was impossible to tell. Ragnarok arranged for them to take separate carts, Harry, Hagrid, and Griphook to the Potter Trust Vault, while the Addamses went even deeper with Ragnarok himself to the mysterious Vault 13. The cart ride was exhilarating, plunging deep into the caverns beneath London at breakneck speed. When they finally reached his vault, Harry was astonished to see the piles of gold, silver, and bronze coins within. All yours, Hagrid told him proudly as Harry stared at the first real tangible connection to his parents he'd ever seen. After filling a bag with coins, they made their way back to the surface, where the Addamses were already waiting. Gomez was examining a large, ornate key that seemed to be made of bone, while Fester juggled what appeared to be rubies the size of eggs. Successful expedition? Morticia inquired as Harry approached. Yes, thank you, Harry replied, still slightly dazed by the revelation of his inheritance. Excellent. Now for the real adventure, shopping. Gomez declared. Where to first, Hagrid? Might as well get your uniform, Hagrid suggested, nodding toward Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Ah, but first, Grandmama interjected, I think we need to address the boy's existing wardrobe. She gestured at Harry's oversized hand-me-downs with obvious disapproval. No wizard should look like he's wearing a circus tent. Before Harry could protest, the Addamses had whisked him into a high-end clothing shop a few doors down from Madame Malkin's. Within minutes, he found himself being measured by an enthusiastic tailor while Morticia supervised with exacting standards. No, the black is too ordinary, she critiqued as the tailor held up fabric samples. We need something with depth, perhaps the midnight shadow weave. And the cut must accommodate movement, one never knows when one might need to flee from angry villagers. An hour later, Harry emerged from the shop dressed in clothing that actually fit him for the first time in his life. Though not as flamboyant as Gomez's pinstripes or as gothic as Wednesday's funeral attire, his new outfit, a charcoal gray shirt, black trousers, and a deep green jacket that Morticia said matched his eyes, made him look like a different person entirely. Much better, Morticia approved. Now you look like someone who might survive his first year at Hogwarts. The survival rate is quite high these days, Wednesday added. Almost 90%, according to Mother's old school records. Harry laughed, assuming she was joking, until he saw Hagrid's expression. Wait, is that true? Course not, Hagrid assured him hastily. Hogwarts is the safest place in Britain. Mostly. The rest of the shopping expedition proceeded in similar fashion, with the Addams family turning what should have been a straightforward process into a series of increasingly bizarre encounters. At Flourish and Blotts, Grandmama engaged the proprietor in a heated debate about the accuracy of their potions' texts. At the apothecary, Morticia inquired after ingredients that made the shopkeeper turn pale and mutter about import restrictions. Pugsley nearly caused an international incident at the wand shop when he asked Mr. Ollivander if wands could be modified to explode on command. Through it all, Harry found himself enjoying the chaos. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone, wasn't the strange one, wasn't the outcast. Walking beside Wednesday, who regarded the wizarding world with the same skeptical detachment she seemed to apply to everything, he felt almost normal. The highlight came when they visited Aesop's Owl Emporium to purchase Harry's birthday present from Hagrid. While the giant man helped Harry select a beautiful snowy owl, Gomez engaged the shop owner in an intense negotiation over a particularly evil-looking raven. He's perfect for Wednesday, Gomez insisted. Look at those malevolent eyes. That razor-sharp beak. The clear intelligence and contempt for all living things. Father, Wednesday said quietly, I prefer the barn owl in the corner. The one that looks like it's wearing a death mask. Gomez followed her gaze to a ghostly white barn owl with heart-shaped facial feathers that did indeed give it the appearance of a skull. Magnificent choice, my dear. A true connoisseur of the macabre, just like your mother. By late afternoon, they had acquired everything on Harry's school list, plus numerous additions the Addamses insisted were essential, a set of silver potions knives, they cut through anything, including most curses, Grandmama assured him, a small library of books not on the official curriculum, background reading, Morticia explained, and a curious silver instrument from a junk shop that Fester claimed could detect vengeful spirits, always handy in a boarding school, those places are lousy with poltergeists. They took a break for ice cream at Florian Fortescue's, where Harry had his first proper ice cream cone while Pugsley experimented with mixing every available flavor into a concoction that smoked ominously. "Have you enjoyed your first day in the wizarding world, Harry?" Morticia asked as they sat at a table outside the parlor. "It's been amazing," Harry admitted. "I still can't believe any of this is real." "Reality is vastly overrated," Gomez declared, spearing his ice cream with a small dagger rather than using a spoon. "The best parts of existence lurk in the shadows between what is and what might be." "What my husband means," Morticia translated with a fond smile, "is that there is more to both the magical and non-magical worlds than most people ever see. You, Harry, have the rare opportunity to explore both. Plus all the weird stuff in between," Pugsley added helpfully, his ice cream now bubbling like a cauldron. Harry glanced around at this strange family who had so abruptly entered his life. Gomez was now balancing his dagger on his nose while Fester applauded. Grandmama appeared to be slipping something suspicious into a passing wizard's pocket. Wednesday sat silently beside Harry, methodically dissecting her ice cream scoop as if conducting an autopsy. And Hagrid watched it all with a mixture of amusement and concern. They were bizarre, unpredictable, and possibly dangerous, but they had shown him more kindness in one day than the Dursleys had in 10 years. They'd clothed him, fed him, introduced him to a world he belonged in, and treated him not as a burden but as someone worth knowing. "What happens when school starts?" Harry asked suddenly. "Will you go back to America?" The Addamses exchanged glances. "We haven't decided yet," Morticia admitted. "Much depends on how the situation with your relatives develops. The blood protection Dumbledore established is genuine, if crude. You do need to return there periodically for it to remain effective." Harry's heart sank. "So I have to go back to the Dursleys?" "Eventually, yes," Morticia nodded. "But not necessarily under the same conditions as before." "Definitely not," Gomez declared. "No more cupboards. No more starvation. No more hand-me-down rags. The Dursleys will treat you properly, or they'll answer to the Addams family. And we'll visit," Wednesday added, surprising everyone. "Whether they like it or not." "Really?" Harry couldn't keep the hope from his voice. "Of course," Wednesday replied matter-of-factly. "You're interesting. Most people aren't." From Wednesday, Harry sensed this was high praise indeed. "Plus," Pugsley added, "I haven't had a chance to show you any of my good explosives yet." "The point is," Morticia concluded, "you're not alone anymore, Harry. Whether we're physically present or not, you have people who care about your welfare now." Harry blinked rapidly, trying to fight back the unfamiliar sting of tears. He'd spent so many years convincing himself he didn't need anyone, that he was fine on his own, that this sudden introduction to something like a real family left him emotionally unbalanced. Seeing his struggle, Wednesday quietly placed a small, pale hand over his. She didn't smile. Harry wasn't sure her face could form that expression, but her dark eyes held something like understanding. "Being different isn't the same as being alone," she said simply. Harry nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The moment was broken by a commotion from the street. A crowd had gathered around the entrance to Gringotts, where a family of unmistakable redheads appeared to be arguing with someone just out of sight. The Weasleys, Hagrid identified them. "Good people. Arthur works at the Ministry, bit obsessed with Muggle artifacts." As they watched, the hidden party stepped into view, a tall, aristocratic blonde man with a walking stick, accompanied by a boy about Harry's age who looked like a smaller version of himself. Both wore expressions of contempt as they addressed the red-headed family. "Ah, the Malfoys," Gomez observed. "Still around, I see. Some things never change." "You know them?" Harry asked. "By reputation," Morticia replied. "Old wizarding family. Very proud of their bloodline. Very selective about their associations. They don't like people like me, do they?" Harry guessed. "People with Muggle connections." "Their loss," Wednesday said dismissively. Limiting your gene pool leads to webbed feet and excessive drooling. Just look at Cousin Lumpy. The confrontation across the street intensified, with the blond man saying something that made the red-headed father lunge forward, only to be held back by what appeared to be his twin sons. Perhaps we should intervene, Morticia suggested. It's been ages since we've had a proper blood feud. Now, Hagrid cautioned. We don't want to cause a scene. Plenty of those in Harry's future without startin' early. Reluctantly, the Addamses remained seated, though Grandmama looked particularly disappointed at the missed opportunity for conflict. The Malfoys eventually departed with matching sneers, and the red-headed family continued into Gringotts. You'll meet plenty of people like the Malfoys at Hogwarts, Hagrid told Harry seriously. But don't let them get to ya. There's not a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin, but that doesn't mean all Slytherins are bad. Slytherin? Harry questioned. It's one of the 4 houses at Hogwarts, Morticia explained. Each has its own character. Slytherin values ambition and cunning. Ravenclaw prizes intelligence and learning. Hufflepuff treasures loyalty and hard work. And Gryffindor celebrates courage and chivalry. Personally, I've always found house divisions rather limiting, Gomez commented. Why be just cunning or just brave when you can be cunning while being brave about being cunning? Where were you sorted? Harry asked, curious about their Hogwarts experiences. Another exchange of glances before Morticia answered. We didn't attend Hogwarts, Harry. Addams family magic is different from what they teach there. We had private tutors for the basics, then learned the family arts directly from our elders. The screaming still haunts me, Fester sighed nostalgically. 3 years locked in the family crypt with nothing but the ancestral ghosts for company. Best education a boy could ask for. Harry wasn't sure how to respond to that, but was saved from trying when things suddenly emerged from Gomez's breast pocket, gesturing frantically. What's that, old man? Gomez frowned, concentrating on things signs. Dursleys? Looking for us? His expression darkened. And saying what about Harry? Things' gestures became more animated. Morticia's eyes narrowed dangerously. I see, she said, her voice like Arctic ice. It seems, Harry, that your uncle has decided to report you missing to the Muggle authorities. He's claiming we've kidnapped you. Harry's stomach dropped. Just when things were going well, the Dursleys had to ruin everything, as usual. But that's ridiculous, he protested. I went with you willingly. They practically threw me out this morning. Unfortunately, Morticia said, Muggle authorities tend to side with legal guardians in these situations, regardless of circumstances. And if wizarding authorities become involved, Dumbledore will insist you return to them, Gomez finished grimly. Harry felt the fragile happiness of the day crumbling around him. So I have to go back. For now, Morticia conceded. But not without certain arrangements in place. Gomez's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. I have it. A contract. Legally binding, both in Muggle and magical terms. We'll make the Dursleys sign it in exchange for returning you unharmed. He made exaggerated quotation marks in the air. What kind of contract? Harry asked, hope rekindling. One guaranteeing your proper treatment, Morticia explained. No more cupboard. Regular meals. Respect for your property and privacy. Access to your school things. And permission for us to visit regularly to ensure compliance. They'll never agree to that, Harry said skeptically. Gomez grinned, twirling his mustache. They will when they see the alternative. What's the alternative? Pugsley asked eagerly. Why, the full force of Addams' family displeasure, of course. Gomez declared. Generations of accumulated hexes, curses, and legal entanglements that would make their lives a living nightmare. More importantly, Morticia added calmly, we'll suggest that if they don't sign, we'll simply disappear with Harry into the wizarding world, where Muggle authorities can't find us. Their choice: sign our reasonable contract, or never see their nephew again and have to explain his permanent disappearance to the authorities. That's blackmail, Hagrid said, though he didn't sound entirely disapproving. We prefer the term aggressive negotiation, Gomez corrected cheerfully. Now, let's head back to Privet Drive and have a civilized discussion with the Dursleys. When the Addams extraordinary vehicle pulled up outside number 4, Privet Drive, they found the house surrounded by police cars, their lights flashing in the early evening gloom. Vernon Dursley stood on the front lawn, gesticulating wildly as he spoke to several officers. Petunia hovered nearby, dabbing theatrically at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Oh my," Morticia observed. "Your uncle appears to have escalated matters." "He's really reported me kidnapped," Harry said incredulously. "After practically telling you to keep me this morning." "A common tactic," Wednesday noted. "Create a public spectacle to pressure the other party. Surprisingly strategic for someone with such a limited intellect." Gomez adjusted his tie. "Well, I've always appreciated a flair for the dramatic. Shall we make our entrance?" "Wait," Hagrid cautioned. "This is gettin' complicated. Maybe I should go fetch Dumbledore." "No time for that, my hirsute friend," Gomez declared. "Besides, this is a family matter. Harry, are you ready?" Harry nodded, a strange calm settling over him. For once, he wasn't facing the Dursleys alone. "Ready." Lurch brought the car to a stop directly in front of the Dursley home, the engine cutting off with an ominous backfire that sounded remarkably like a growl. Every head turned as the Addams family emerged, with Harry carefully positioned between Gomez and Morticia. "There he is," Vernon bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at Harry. "Officers, there's the boy. And those people who took him." The police officers looked confused, clearly not expecting the kidnappers to deliver their victim directly to the scene of the crime. Gomez stepped forward, the picture of aristocratic dignity. "Good evening, officers. I understand there's been some confusion. My name is Gomez Addams, and this is my wife, Morticia. We've been entertaining young Harry here at our home, with his relatives' knowledge and permission." "That's a lie," Vernon shouted, his face purpling. "They forced their way into our home last night. Threatened us. Took the boy." Harry stepped forward. "That's not true. Uncle Vernon told me I could go with them for breakfast. Then this afternoon, he actually said they could keep me. Good riddance were his exact words." The officers exchanged glances, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. "Sir," one finally addressed Gomez, "regardless of the circumstances, if you're not the boy's legal guardian," a technicality we were in the process of addressing, Gomez interrupted smoothly. "We're distant relatives of the boy's mother, visiting from America. We discovered the unusual conditions of Harry's life here and were naturally concerned." "Unusual conditions?" the officer repeated. "Harry, perhaps you should show the officers your normal sleeping arrangements," Morticia suggested gently. Vernon lunged forward. "Now see here. What happens in my house is none of your business." "Actually, sir," the officer said firmly, "if there's a suggestion of improper care for a minor, it very much is our business." Harry led several officers to the cupboard under the stairs, which still contained his thin mattress and meager possessions. The police exchanged troubled glances as Harry explained matter-of-factly that this had been his bedroom for as long as he could remember. Outside, Gomez had produced a thick sheaf of legal papers from inside his jacket. "We were planning to discuss these with Mr. and Mrs. Dursley privately, but since the authorities are already involved, perhaps they should witness the signing." "What is this?" Vernon demanded suspiciously. "A care agreement," Morticia explained. "Setting out minimum standards for Harry's welfare while he remains in your home." "I'm not signing anything," Vernon blustered. "In that case," Gomez said cheerfully, "we'll have no choice but to pursue full legal guardianship of Harry." Given the evidence of neglect and possible abuse, I believe any court would rule in our favor. Of course, that would involve extensive investigation into your household, testimony from neighbors, school officials, perhaps even social services. Vernon's face went from purple to white as the implications sank in. You wouldn't dare. Or, Morticia continued as if he hadn't spoken, you can sign this simple agreement, maintain your guardianship, and we all avoid a lengthy, public legal battle that would undoubtedly attract significant attention from the community. She emphasized the last words, knowing the Dursleys' obsession with appearances would make this their worst nightmare. Vernon and Petunia huddled together, whispering frantically. The police officers, meanwhile, were interviewing Dudley, whose attempts to defend his parents were only making things worse, but Harry deserves the cupboard. He's a freak. Finally, Vernon turned back to the Addamses, his expression a mixture of hatred and defeat. What exactly does this agreement require? Gomez smiled triumphantly. Nothing unreasonable. Harry gets Dudley's second bedroom permanently. Regular meals, the same food and portions as the rest of the family. No more chores than would be appropriate for any child his age. Access to his school supplies and the ability to complete his homework. And permission for us to visit regularly to ensure these conditions are being met. Vernon's mustache twitched violently as he weighed his options. Finally, with a glance at the police officers still examining the cupboard, he snatched the contract from Gomez's hand. Fine. We'll sign your bloody contract. But I want it in writing that the boy will attend his new school and stay there for all holidays except summer. Gladly, Gomez agreed. Harry will indeed attend Hogwarts School of, don't say it. Vernon hissed frantically, glancing at the nearby officers. His special school for gifted children, Gomez amended smoothly. The next hour passed in a flurry of signatures, explanations to the police, who remained suspicious but ultimately had to accept the resolution when Harry himself confirmed he was neither kidnapped nor wished to press charges against the Dursleys, and the relocation of Harry's possessions, now significantly expanded after the day's shopping, to Dudley's second bedroom. Through it all, Harry observed with a sense of detached wonder. Just 24 hours ago, he'd been a prisoner in his cupboard, friendless and hopeless. Now he stood in a real bedroom, surrounded by his own things, with the Dursleys cowed into treating him like a human being and the promise of magic school looming on the horizon. And it was all because of Thing's unexpected appearance in his cupboard. As the police finally departed and the neighbors reluctantly retreated to their homes, though many remained peeking through curtains, the Addams family prepared to return to number 6, Privet Drive. We'll be right next door if you need anything, Morticia assured Harry as they stood in his new bedroom. And Thing will check on you regularly. As if summoned, Thing scurried out from under the bed and gave Harry a thumbs up. How long will you stay? Harry asked, trying not to sound as anxious as he felt. Until September 1st, when you leave for Hogwarts, Gomez replied. We want to ensure the Dursleys honor our agreement during these crucial weeks. And after that? Morticia smiled gently. We'll remain in England for the time being. Perhaps find a more suitable residence near Hogwarts. The contract gives us visitation rights during holidays, and we intend to exercise them. Plus, Wednesday added, appearing silently in the doorway, you still need to learn proper Addams magic. The kind they don't teach in schools. Harry felt a warm glow of gratitude. Thank you. For everything. I don't know why you've done all this for me, but, family, my boy. Gomez interrupted, clapping him on the shoulder. No matter how distant the connection, an Addams never abandons family. Besides, Grandmama added, poking her head around Wednesday, your mother would have haunted us for all eternity if we'd left you in that cupboard. And not in the fun way. After a few more reassurances and a final warning from Fester to the Dursleys about the electrical consequences of mistreating Harry, I can make every appliance in this house turn against you, toasters, televisions, even the toilet will become your enemy. The Addams family finally departed for the night. Harry sat on his new bed, surrounded by his new possessions, in his new room, trying to process everything that had happened. His Hogwarts letter sat on the nightstand beside his new owl's cage. Hedwig, he'd decided to call her, after a name he'd found in A History of Magic. A soft tap at the window drew his attention. Wednesday Addams stood on a branch of the tree outside, her pale face ghostly in the darkness. Harry hurried to open the window. "How did you climb up here?" "Practice," she replied simply, handing him a small package through the opening. "I thought you might want this." Harry unwrapped it to find a curious black book bound in leather that felt unsettlingly like skin. The pages were blank, the paper thick and yellowish. "A communication journal," Wednesday explained. "I have its twin. Whatever you write in yours appears in mine. For when we're not next door anymore." "This is brilliant," Harry said, genuinely touched. "Thank you, Wednesday." She nodded, her expression unchanged yet somehow warmer. "The Dursleys fear us more than they fear magic. Remember that. Its power." With those cryptic words, she disappeared back into the darkness, moving through the tree with unnatural grace. Harry closed the window and returned to his bed, the journal clutched in his hands. For the first time in his life, he had leverage over the Dursleys. He had friends, bizarre, possibly dangerous friends, but friends nonetheless. He had a future beyond Privet Drive. He had freedom. Not complete, not yet, but it was a start. As he drifted off to sleep, things settled comfortably on his nightstand, keeping watch. In the neighboring house, the Addams family continued their peculiar activities, Gomez fencing with a possessed suit of armor, Morticia pruning roses off their stems, Wednesday conducting small animal autopsies, Pugsley testing explosive compounds, Fester charging batteries in his mouth, Grandmama brewing potions that defied magical classification, and Lurch playing funeral dirges on a harpsichord that hadn't been there that morning. Privet Drive would never be the same. And neither would Harry Potter. Chapter 3, The freedom of being different. The next 2 weeks were the strangest, and happiest, of Harry's life. Every morning, he woke up in an actual bedroom instead of a cupboard. Every day, he ate proper meals instead of scraps. And every hour brought new wonders as the Addams family introduced him to their particular brand of magic, mayhem, and macabre delight. "Again, Harry." Grandmama encouraged from her position on the Addamses' back lawn. "Focus on the energy, not the wand." Harry concentrated, holding his new wand, 11 inches, holly with phoenix feather core, loosely in his fingers. Unlike the precise movements described in his Hogwarts textbooks, Grandmama insisted he learn to feel magic directly. "The wand is a crutch," she'd explained on his first day of lessons. "Useful, certainly, but limiting. Addams' magic flows from blood and bone and darkness." Now, Harry closed his eyes, trying to sense the strange tingling he'd felt yesterday when he'd successfully lit a candle without speaking the incantation. "Good," Grandmama nodded approvingly. "Now direct it, not with your wand, with your intent." Harry pictured the small stone on the ground rising into the air. He felt something shift inside him, a subtle current flowing from his core down his arm. The stone trembled, then rose shakily to hover at eye level. "Excellent." Grandmama cackled. "You've got the touch, boy. Lily had it too, that raw connection to magic. Most wand wavers never develop it." Harry let the stone drop, breathing hard. This magic felt different from what he practiced with his textbooks, wilder, more intuitive, but also more draining. "Is this how they'll teach us at Hogwarts?" he asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Grandmama snorted. "Hardly. They'll have you memorizing rigid incantations and precise wand movements. Important fundamentals, yes, but they neglect the personal relationship with magic." She leaned closer, her ancient eyes gleaming. "That's why Addams' magic has endured while other families faded. We never forgot the old ways." From her perch on a nearby tombstone, which had mysteriously appeared in the garden overnight, Wednesday observed Harry's practice with critical attention. "You're improving," she noted when Harry joined her during a break. "Yesterday you made the stone explode." Thanks, I think, Harry smiled, still getting used to Wednesday's unique form of encouragement. She handed him a book bound in what appeared to be snakeskin. Mother suggested you might find this useful. It explains magical theory from a pre-Hogwarts perspective. Harry accepted the book, noting the title, Magic Most Primordial, Connecting with Chaos. Don't let Dumbledore see it, Wednesday advised. He disapproves of knowledge that challenges his structured approach. How do you know so much about Dumbledore? Harry asked curiously. Wednesday's expression remained impassive. Our family has a long memory. And Dumbledore has a long history of arranging things as he believes they should be. Before Harry could press for details, an explosion rocked the back garden, sending a mushroom-shaped cloud of purple smoke into the air. Pugsley emerged from the haze, his face blackened but his grin visible through the soot. Did you see that? He shouted excitedly. 3 times bigger than yesterday. Well done, darling, Morticia called from where she was pruning a particularly vicious-looking plant. Though do remember what we discussed about keeping explosions below neighborhood notification level. Sorry, Mother, Pugsley replied, not sounding sorry at all. Harry had grown accustomed to such interruptions. The Addams family's approach to education was unlike anything he'd imagined, chaotic, dangerous, and strangely effective. Besides wandless magic with Grandmama, he'd learned basic potions brewing, with ingredients that would never be allowed at Hogwarts, defensive fencing from Gomez, the best spell is pointless if someone runs you through, my boy, and even rudimentary explosives from Pugsley, just enough to escape, not enough to leave evidence. Wednesday's lessons were the most unusual. She taught him to move silently, to observe rather than be observed, and to trust his instincts when they whispered of danger. The world is full of predators, she told him during their first midnight lesson, as they practiced stalking through the shadows of the Addams' transformed house. Most people are prey. You need to be neither, become the watcher in the dark. Now, as they sat together on the tombstone, Wednesday regarded Harry with her usual solemn intensity. The Dursleys have been quiet, she observed. Too quiet. Harry nodded. Since the signing of the contract, his relatives had retreated into hostile compliance. They provided meals, left him alone, and pretended he didn't exist, a significant improvement over their previous treatment. Uncle Vernon's planning something, Harry agreed. I've seen him whispering with Aunt Petunia, looking at calendars. August 25th, Wednesday said matter-of-factly. Harry blinked. What's August 25th? The day they plan to speak with Dumbledore. I found the note in your uncle's jacket when I searched your house last night. You broke into my house? Harry asked, surprised but not particularly shocked. Nothing Wednesday did surprised him anymore. She shrugged slightly. I didn't break anything. Your relatives sleep very soundly after Grandmama's special tea. You've been drugging the Dursleys. Now Harry was shocked. Just monitoring their health, Wednesday replied blandly. The tea helps with their natural unpleasantness. Harry wasn't sure whether to be horrified or impressed. The Addamses had a unique moral compass. They would never harm an innocent but seemed to have very creative definitions of harm and innocent. What does Uncle Vernon want with Dumbledore? Harry asked, returning to the main point. To get rid of you permanently, Wednesday replied. The note mentioned alternate arrangements and year-round accommodation at the freak school. She paused. They're afraid of us, but they're hoping Dumbledore will override our contract. Harry felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The past 2 weeks had given him his first taste of what having a supportive family might feel like. The thought of losing that, of being abandoned to Hogwarts or forced back into the Dursleys' unchecked cruelty, made him feel slightly ill. Wednesday, observing his expression, did something unexpected. She placed her hand briefly over his. Don't worry. We anticipated this. You did? She nodded. Mother and Father have already contacted Dumbledore. He's coming tomorrow. Harry's eyes widened. Tomorrow? Here. For tea, Wednesday confirmed. Grandmama is preparing special cakes. Should I be worried about what's in them? The ghost of a smile touched Wednesday's lips. Only if you eat the ones with the green icing. Albus Dumbledore arrived at number 6, Privet Drive precisely at 4 o'clock the following afternoon. Unlike his usual flamboyant wizarding robes, he wore a subdued, for him, purple suit that still managed to draw stares from the neighbors. Lurch answered the door with his characteristic groan, leading the headmaster to the parlor where the Addams family waited. The room had been decorated for the occasion with fresh cobwebs, candles made from suspicious-looking wax, and a tea service that appeared to be crafted from human bones. Dumbledore. Gomez greeted enthusiastically, bounding forward to pump the wizard's hand. Welcome, welcome. Been too long. Mr. Addams, Dumbledore nodded politely, his blue eyes twinkling despite his obvious wariness. Mrs. Addams. Thank you for your invitation. We're so pleased you could join us, Morticia glided forward. Harry has been most eager to meet you properly. Harry, seated between Wednesday and Pugsley on a Victorian fainting couch, felt a complex mixture of emotions as he finally faced the man who had placed him with the Dursleys. Curiosity, respect, and a surprising undercurrent of resentment swirled inside him. Harry, Dumbledore smiled warmly, taking a seat in a high-backed chair that seemed to shift ominously beneath him. How wonderful to see you looking so well. I trust these past weeks have been educational. Very, Harry replied cautiously. The Addamses have taught me a lot about magic already. Indeed? Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. How fascinating. Though I hope they've emphasized that underage wizards are not permitted to practice magic outside of school. Oh, we've been most careful about that, Gomez assured him with a wink that suggested exactly the opposite. Merely theoretical discussions. Philosophical explorations of magical potential. And a few practical demonstrations, Grandmama added, entering with a tray of oddly colored cakes. For educational purposes only, of course. Of course, Dumbledore murmured, accepting a cup of tea from Lurch while politely declining the suspicious pastries. An awkward silence settled over the room, broken only by Pugsley enthusiastically crunching a cake that appeared to contain actual insects. Well, Dumbledore finally said, I must admit I was surprised to learn of your intervention in Harry's living situation. While I appreciate your concern, there were specific protections in place, blood wards, Morticia interrupted smoothly. Yes, we're familiar with the principle. Ancient magic, if somewhat simplistic in execution. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly at the criticism. The protection is based on Lily Potter's sacrifice. As long as Harry can call home a place where her blood dwells, he cannot be harmed by Voldemort. An elegant solution to a narrow problem, Grandmama observed, taking a seat beside Dumbledore. But what about all the other forms of harm that can befall a child? Starvation? Neglect? Psychological torture? I assure you, I had no idea the Dursleys would treat Harry so poorly, Dumbledore said, genuine regret in his voice. I left specific instructions, but never checked, Wednesday interjected, her quiet voice somehow cutting through the room. Not once in 10 years. Dumbledore seemed taken aback by the direct accusation from the solemn child. There were monitoring charms, which detected only magical threats, Morticia finished for him. Not a cupboard under the stairs. Not missed meals. Not clothes fit for a scarecrow. Harry shifted uncomfortably as the conversation continued around him, feeling simultaneously validated and exposed. The Addamses were saying everything he'd felt but never articulated about his abandonment. The past cannot be changed, Dumbledore said carefully. But I am concerned about the present. The blood wards have weakened considerably since your arrival, Mr. Addams. Your family's unique magical signature interferes with their function. A side effect we anticipated, Gomez acknowledged. But consider this, Dumbledore. What good are wards against Dark Lords if the boy is broken from within? What victory is it to save him from Voldemort only to crush his spirit through isolation and mistreatment? Dumbledore sighed deeply. You make valid points. However, the protection remains essential. With Voldemort not truly gone, he's not gone. Harry interrupted, unable to contain himself. But Hagrid told you what he believes, Dumbledore said gently. I, however, have reason to suspect that Voldemort, while greatly diminished, continues to exist in some form. A cold silence followed this pronouncement. Well, that's delightfully ominous, Fester finally declared, speaking for the first time since Dumbledore's arrival. I love a good resurrection story. The malevolence, the revenge-seeking, the inevitable confrontation at an inconvenient moment. Uncle Fester, Morticia chided softly. What? Just saying what everyone's thinking. Fester defended. If Voldemort might return, Harry said slowly, shouldn't I be learning how to defend myself? The Addamses have been teaching me. While I appreciate their initiative, Dumbledore interrupted, there is a curriculum at Hogwarts designed specifically for your age and experience level. Magic built upon magic, skills developed in the proper sequence. He gave Gomez and Morticia a pointed look. Addams family magic, while undoubtedly effective, follows different principles than what we teach at Hogwarts. You mean it's not as constrained, Wednesday observed flatly. I mean it's not as regulated, Dumbledore corrected diplomatically. Which presents its own risks, particularly for a young wizard still discovering his abilities. Thing chose that moment to scurry across the coffee table, deliberately upsetting Dumbledore's teacup before disappearing under a doily. Fascinating familiar, Dumbledore commented, seemingly unperturbed as he vanished the spilled tea with a casual wave of his wand. I don't believe I've encountered one since the 1850s. Thing's been with the family for generations, Gomez said proudly. Delivered Harry's Hogwarts letter when your owls couldn't get through. Yes, that was rather puzzling, Dumbledore frowned. The Dursleys' efforts shouldn't have prevented magical delivery. They didn't, Morticia confirmed. Something else was interfering. Something that responded to Thing's particular nature. Dumbledore's expression sharpened with interest. I'd be most curious to explore that further. Perhaps another time, Morticia deflected smoothly. Today, we should focus on Harry's future arrangements. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. While I appreciate the improvements you've made to Harry's home life, I must insist he return fully to the Dursleys' care after his first year at Hogwarts. The blood protection must be renewed annually to remain effective. Harry felt his heart sink, but before he could protest, Gomez leaped to his feet. Out of the question, he declared passionately. We've seen how they treat the boy. Contract or no contract, the moment they believe our attention has wavered, they'll revert to their prior cruelty. I understand your concern, Dumbledore said calmly, but the protection can be maintained without subjecting Harry to continuous mistreatment, Morticia interrupted. The blood connection requires residence, not imprisonment. Harry could spend the minimum time necessary at Privet Drive, 2 weeks, perhaps, and the remainder of his summer with us. Us? Dumbledore repeated carefully. You intend to remain in England, then? We've taken a shine to the place, Gomez grinned. The constant rain, the pervasive gloom, the repressed emotions erupting in passive-aggressive outbursts, it's practically a second home already. We're purchasing a property near Hogwarts, Morticia explained more practically. Something with appropriate ambience. I see. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. And you would serve as Harry's guardians during these periods? Magical guardians only, Morticia clarified. We're not seeking to usurp the Dursleys' legal position in the Muggle world, merely to provide Harry with the guidance and support he should have received all along. Dumbledore's gaze shifted to Harry. And what do you want, my boy? The direct question startled Harry, who had grown accustomed to adults making decisions without consulting him. He glanced at Wednesday, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. I want to go to Hogwarts, Harry said firmly. I want to learn magic properly. But I also want to spend time with the Addamses. They've taught me more about my parents and my heritage in 2 weeks than the Dursleys did in 10 years. They treat me like I matter. A flash of something, regret. Guilt, crossed Dumbledore's face. I see. And the Dursleys? How do they feel about this arrangement? They'll agree to anything that minimizes their contact with the boy, Grandmama cackled. Especially after they see what happens to their plumbing when they don't. Dumbledore wisely chose not to inquire about this cryptic threat. Instead, he set down his teacup and regarded the assembled family with new consideration. Perhaps a compromise is possible, he suggested. Harry attends Hogwarts as planned. He returns to the Dursleys for the first 2 weeks of summer to renew the blood protection. He then spends the remainder of his holiday with the Addams family, under certain conditions. What conditions? Gomez asked suspiciously. Nothing onerous, Dumbledore assured him. Merely that you respect the restrictions on underage magic, that you don't remove Harry from Britain without notification, and that you allow occasional visits from a representative of Hogwarts to ensure his well-being. To spy on us, you mean, Wednesday said bluntly. Dumbledore smiled at her. To maintain communication, Miss Addams. Trust requires transparency. We find shadows much more revealing, Morticia commented, but nodded nonetheless. Your terms seem reasonable, with one addition, we wish to be notified of any significant events affecting Harry while he's at Hogwarts. As his magical guardians, we should be informed of his progress, any disciplinary issues, and especially any dangers he might face. Dumbledore hesitated, then nodded slowly. That can be arranged, though I assure you Hogwarts is quite safe. Things suddenly reappeared, scuttling across the floor to deliver a sealed envelope to Gomez, who read it quickly. Ah! Perfect timing, he announced. The Dursleys have just been spotted approaching. Lurch must have delivered our invitation. Invitation? Harry and Dumbledore asked simultaneously. We thought it best to resolve everything at once, Morticia explained. The Dursleys wish to speak with Professor Dumbledore about Harry's arrangements. We've merely expedited the meeting. Sure enough, the doorbell soon played its funeral dirge, and Lurch returned leading 3 extremely reluctant Dursleys. Vernon looked like he was being marched to his execution, Petunia couldn't stop staring at the various oddities decorating the parlor, and Dudley was unsuccessfully trying to hide behind his mother's bony frame. Dursley! Gomez greeted enthusiastically. And family! How delightful! You know Dumbledore, of course. Vernon's face cycled through several colors before settling on a mottled purple. You, he sputtered at Dumbledore. This is your doing. These freaks invading our normal neighborhood. I assure you, Mr. Dursley, the Addamses acted entirely on their own initiative, Dumbledore replied calmly. Though I must say, having seen the results, I find myself rather grateful for their intervention. We had an agreement. Vernon blustered. We took the boy, kept him, fed him, and in return, your kind would stay away. A dangerous silence fell over the room. Harry felt rather than saw the Addams family tense, like predators preparing to strike. Fed him? Wednesday repeated softly, her dark eyes fixed on Vernon. Is that what you call what you did? The boy's alive, isn't he? Vernon snapped. Never mind that he's been nothing but trouble since the day he arrived. Strange things happening, owls, talking snakes, talking snakes. Pugsley perked up with interest. You can talk to snakes, Harry. That's so cool. Harry blinked, surprised by both Vernon's revelation and Pugsley's reaction. I didn't know it was a thing. It only happened once, at the zoo. Parseltongue, Dumbledore murmured, looking troubled. Most unusual. Most wonderful. Grandmama corrected. The boy has gifts. Instead of nurturing them, you locked him in a cupboard, she added, glaring at the Dursleys. Now see here, Vernon began, but Morticia cut him off with a raised hand. "We didn't invite you here to rehash past grievances," she said coolly. "We're discussing Harry's future. Professor Dumbledore has suggested a compromise that should satisfy everyone's concerns. The only thing that would satisfy me is the boy gone permanently," Vernon declared. "We never wanted him. We never asked for him. He was dumped on our doorstep with nothing but a letter." Harry flinched despite himself. Even after years of the Dursleys' abuse, hearing his uncle state so baldly that they'd never wanted him still hurt. "A doorstep?" Gomez repeated incredulously, turning to Dumbledore. "You left an infant on a doorstep? In November?" Dumbledore had the grace to look slightly abashed. "There were warming charms, that is beside the point," Petunia interrupted shrilly. "We've done our duty. More than our duty. Now we want him out of our house permanently." "Unfortunately, that's not possible," Dumbledore said firmly. "The protection that keeps Harry, and by extension, your family, safe requires his residence with blood relations. However," he continued as Vernon opened his mouth to protest, "we've agreed that this need only be for 2 weeks each summer. The remainder of his holiday time will be spent with the Addams family." 2 weeks too many, Vernon muttered, but the prospect of being mostly rid of Harry clearly appealed to him. "And who pays for his upkeep during those 2 weeks? His schooling? His clothes?" "Harry has his own funds for school expenses," Dumbledore assured him. "As for the 2 weeks annually, surely you can manage basic care for that limited time?" Vernon and Petunia exchanged calculating looks. £500, Vernon finally declared. "Per summer. For our inconvenience." Harry expected Dumbledore to refuse such a nakedly mercenary demand, but to his surprise, the headmaster simply nodded. "That can be arranged. Converted from Harry's trust at the current exchange rate." "His trust pays you to tolerate him?" Wednesday asked, her voice dripping with quiet disdain. How utterly predictable. Vernon's face darkened at the girl's tone. "Now you listen here, young lady," whatever ill-advised threat Vernon intended to make died in his throat as Wednesday fixed him with her unblinking stare. Despite being a fraction of his size, something in her expression made the large man physically recoil. "I've dissected creatures with more spine than you," she informed him matter-of-factly. "They screamed less, too." "Wednesday, darling," Morticia gently reproved, "what have we said about threatening guests with your hobbies?" "Only when they can appreciate the artistry," Wednesday recited dutifully, though her gaze never left Vernon's increasingly pale face. Dudley, who had remained blessedly silent until now, suddenly pointed at a glass case on the wall containing what appeared to be a mummified hand. "What's that?" he demanded with his usual lack of tact. "Ah!" Gomez brightened. "The Hand of Glory. Family heirloom, belonged to Great-Uncle Midnight. Acquired under mysterious circumstances during the Goblin Rebellion of 1612. It's disgusting," Dudley declared. "Thank you." Pugsley beamed, taking it as a compliment. "Perhaps we should return to the matter at hand," Dumbledore suggested diplomatically. "We're agreed, then. Harry attends Hogwarts, spends 2 weeks each summer with the Dursleys, and the remainder with the Addams family." "And holidays?" Petunia asked sharply. "Easter? Christmas?" "Those would be spent either at Hogwarts or with the Addamses," Dumbledore confirmed. "If that suits everyone." "Perfectly," Morticia smiled. "We always celebrate the winter solstice most enthusiastically. Harry will enjoy our traditional blood pudding ceremony." The Dursleys looked horrified, but Dumbledore merely twinkled benignly. "Excellent. Then we have an agreement. I'll have the necessary paperwork drawn up recognizing the Addams family as Harry's magical guardians, with limited custodial rights in the Muggle world." Vernon looked like he wanted to object further but couldn't find a specific complaint that wouldn't reveal his true desire, to be completely free of Harry regardless of the consequences. Instead, he settled for a noncommittal grunt that Dumbledore chose to interpret as assent. Throughout this negotiation, Harry had remained quiet, still processing the casual cruelty of Vernon's earlier statements. He'd always known the Dursleys didn't want him, but hearing them haggle over his care like an unwanted pet still stung. Wednesday, observing his expression, did something completely unexpected. She reached over and took his hand, squeezing it briefly. The gesture was so unlike her usual aloofness that Harry stared at her in surprise. "They're not worth your pain," she murmured, too quietly for the adults to hear. "Save it for something worthy." Her words, oddly comforting in their pragmatism, steadied him. Harry nodded slightly and squared his shoulders. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice cutting through the ongoing discussion. All eyes turned to him in surprise. Harry Potter, who had spent most of his life trying to be invisible around the Dursleys, rarely asserted himself so directly. "Of course, my boy," Dumbledore encouraged. "What is it?" Harry looked directly at his aunt and uncle. "I know you never wanted me. I know you've resented every day you've had to have me in your house. And I want you to know that the feeling is mutual." Vernon's face darkened, but Harry pressed on before he could interrupt. "For 10 years, you've tried to make me feel worthless. Like a burden. Like a freak." He glanced at the Addamses. "But I've learned something important these past weeks. Being different isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to celebrate." "Well said," Gomez exclaimed proudly. "I'll stay with you for 2 weeks each summer because I have to," Harry continued, addressing the Dursleys. "I'll follow your rules during that time. But I want something in return." "You're hardly in a position to make demands, boy," Vernon growled. "Actually, I think I am," Harry replied with newfound confidence. "Because I have something you want, my absence. And I have people who actually care about me now." He gestured to the Addamses. "People who would be very upset if I were mistreated during those 2 weeks." Petunia's lips thinned to near invisibility. "What do you want?" "Respect," Harry said simply. "Not affection, we're well past that. Just basic respect. My name is Harry, not boy or freak. I want to be treated as a guest in your home, not a prisoner. And I want your word that you'll never destroy or hide anything sent to me by owl post." The Dursleys exchanged glances. It was clear they wanted to refuse on principle, but the alternative, having the Addams family breathing down their necks for perceived mistreatment, was evidently worse. "Fine," Vernon finally grunted. "But you keep all your freakishness to yourself while you're under our roof." "Gladly," Harry agreed. "The less we have to interact, the better for everyone." Dumbledore observed this exchange with a mixture of sadness and pride. "It seems we have an agreement, then." "Harry, I'm sorry your relationship with your family has been so difficult." "Perhaps, in time, they're not my family," Harry interrupted firmly. "Not really. They're my relatives. There's a difference." He glanced at the Addamses. "I'm just starting to understand what real family means." Morticia's dark eyes softened. "Well said, Harry." Vernon, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, pushed to his feet. "If that's all settled, we'll be going. The neighborhood watch meets tonight, and I'm giving a presentation on suspicious activities." He glared pointedly at Gomez. "Marvelous." Gomez clapped his hands. "We were just discussing joining the watch. Nothing like a good neighborhood surveillance program, reminds me of the Salem days." Vernon blanched at the thought of the Addamses infiltrating yet another aspect of Privet Drive society. "That won't be necessary," he muttered. "Nonsense." Gomez insisted. "Civic duty. Community spirit. Why, Fester has exceptional night vision, don't you, old man? I can see fear at 50 paces." Fester confirmed enthusiastically. "And Wednesday has been practicing her citizen's arrest technique," Morticia added. "Though we're still working on the not using thumbscrews aspect." The Dursleys backed toward the door with increasing urgency. Well, we really must be going, Petunia said shrilly. Come along, Dudleykins. But I want to see the exploding chemicals Pugsley was talking about. Dudley whined, showing more interest in the Addamses' home than was strictly comfortable for his parents. Another time, perhaps, Morticia suggested with a smile that made Petunia grab her son's arm in panic. With hasty goodbyes, directed exclusively at Dumbledore, the Dursleys fled, leaving an atmosphere of amused satisfaction behind them. Well, that went better than expected, Gomez observed, straightening his tie. No bloodshed whatsoever. A little disappointing, Grandmama agreed. I had my hex bag all ready. She patted a small, ominous pouch at her waist. Dumbledore cleared his throat. While I admire your enthusiasm for Harry's welfare, I must stress the importance of maintaining civil relations with the Dursleys. The blood protection will work regardless of their attitude, Morticia interrupted smoothly. The magic requires residence, not affection. If anything, Harry will be safer with clear boundaries and expectations than with festering resentment and hidden abuses. Dumbledore sighed. Perhaps you're right. I sometimes forget that family relationships can be complicated. The most interesting ones always are, Gomez declared, slinging an arm around Harry's shoulders. Isn't that right, my boy? Harry nodded, still processing the dramatic shift in his circumstances. In the span of a few weeks, he'd gone from unwanted burden to someone with choices, with advocates, with a voice that people actually listened to. Now then, Dumbledore said, rising to his feet, I believe my business here is concluded. Harry, I look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts on September 1st. The Hogwarts Express leaves from King's Cross Station, platform 9 3/4, at 11 o'clock sharp. He handed Harry a ticket from his pocket. Don't be late. We'll ensure he arrives punctually, Morticia assured the headmaster. The Addams family has a perfect record for funeral attendances, school departures can't be much different. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Indeed. Well, until September, then. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Harry. Happy birthday in advance. I believe it's next week. Harry blinked in surprise. With all the excitement, he'd completely forgotten his upcoming birthday. Yes, sir. July 31st. A most auspicious date, Dumbledore nodded. Born as the 7th month dies, but we'll discuss such matters another time. Enjoy your celebration. With that cryptic comment, he departed, leaving Harry to wonder what significance his birth date might hold. Well. Gomez exclaimed once Dumbledore had gone. That calls for a celebration. Lurch, the special reserve bubbly. But the meeting went exactly as you planned, Wednesday pointed out. You said Dumbledore would agree to our terms while believing it was his idea. All the more reason to celebrate. Gomez declared. Nothing more satisfying than a scheme unfolding exactly as intended. As Lurch returned with glasses of a suspiciously green effervescent liquid, Harry turned to Morticia. Did you really plan all this from the beginning? Even before Thing delivered my letter? Morticia smiled enigmatically. The Addams family always has contingencies, Harry. When we learned of your situation, we developed several possible approaches. Dumbledore's cooperation simply made things smoother. And if he hadn't cooperated? Plan B was much messier, Pugsley confided with obvious disappointment. Involved fake passports, international port keys, and at least 3 controlled explosions. I had the ransom note already written, Wednesday added. Self-kidnapping is technically not a crime in magical Britain. Harry wasn't entirely sure they were joking. With the Addamses, the line between morbid humor and actual plans was remarkably thin. The important thing, Morticia said, accepting a glass from Lurch, is that you now have options, Harry. Choices. The freedom to be yourself, both the parts shaped by your famous past and those yet to be discovered. A toast. Gomez declared, raising his glass. To Harry Potter. May his first year at Hogwarts be filled with delightful dangers, educational encounters with the supernatural, and just enough academic success to avoid expulsion. To Harry, the family chorused. Harry raised his own glass, filled with normal pumpkin juice rather than the mysterious green liquid, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. For the first time in his life, he had people celebrating him simply for being himself. And, Wednesday added quietly, so only Harry could hear, to freaks everywhere. Harry grinned and clinked his glass against hers. To freaks, he agreed. The remaining weeks before September 1st passed in a whirlwind of preparation, education, and the occasional controlled explosion, though Pugsley's definition of controlled remained concerningly flexible. Harry divided his time between studying his Hogwarts textbooks and learning the more esoteric skills the Addamses deemed essential for survival in the wizarding world. Grandmama taught him to identify poisonous plants by smell alone. A useful skill for potions class, she insisted. Hogwarts students are always mixing up ingredients. Best to know what might kill you before you stir it into your cauldron. Fester demonstrated how to create emergency lighting without magic. Sometimes your wand breaks, or gets stolen, or turns into a rubber chicken, he explained while generating sparks between his teeth. Always have a backup. Gomez instructed Harry in the finer points of wizarding etiquette, mostly by demonstrating exactly what not to do. Politics is just warfare with better costumes, my boy. Know which forks to use, which hands to shake, and which insults require immediate dueling challenges. Even Lurch contributed, teaching Harry to play a mournful tune on the harpsichord that Morticia assured him would calm even the most agitated ghost or ghoul, useful in a castle as old as Hogwarts. But it was Wednesday's lessons that Harry found most valuable. Unlike the others, who focused on specific skills or knowledge, she taught him how to observe, how to listen, and most importantly, how to trust his instincts. Most people ignore the warnings their bodies give them, she explained during one of their midnight walks through the neighborhood. That prickling at the back of your neck. The sudden chill when entering a room. The inexplicable urge to avoid a specific corridor. Those aren't coincidences, they're your subconscious processing information your conscious mind missed. Harry nodded, remembering all the times he'd had feelings about the Dursleys' moods or intentions, warnings that had often helped him avoid the worst of their anger. At Hogwarts, you'll be surrounded by magic and politics, Wednesday continued. Both can be deadly if mishandled. Watch for patterns. Notice who speaks and who remains silent. Identify the power behind the obvious power. You sound like you've been there, Harry observed. Wednesday's expression remained impassive. I've studied it. Our family has extensive records. Hogwarts hasn't fundamentally changed in centuries, the houses, the rivalries, the blind spots all remain consistent. Which house do you think I'll be in? Harry asked, suddenly anxious about the sorting Hagrid had mentioned. Wednesday considered him thoughtfully. Everyone will expect Gryffindor. Your parents were there. The house values align with your public image, the brave boy who survived the killing curse. But expectations are chains, she said simply. You could fit anywhere, depending on what aspects of yourself you choose to nurture. Slytherin would recognize your survival instincts. Ravenclaw would value your curiosity. Hufflepuff would appreciate your capacity for loyalty despite having no models for it. You're not going to tell me which is best. There is no best, Wednesday replied. There's only what serves your growth. The question isn't which house suits the Harry Potter everyone expects, it's which house suits the Harry Potter you want to become. Her words stayed with Harry, adding to his anticipation and anxiety about Hogwarts. While part of him eagerly awaited the chance to learn proper magic and meet other young wizards, another part had grown comfortable with the Addamses' unconventional household. What if he didn't fit in at Hogwarts? What if the other students only saw his famous scar, not the person behind it? These concerns were temporarily overshadowed on July 31st, when Harry experienced his first proper birthday celebration. The Addamses transformed their already bizarre home into what could only be described as a haunted carnival, complete with animated decorations, games of questionable safety, and a cake that periodically emitted anguished screams when cut. Grandmama's special recipe, Morticia explained. The frosting is particularly sensitive. To Harry's surprise, the celebration included guests beyond the immediate household. Hagrid returned, bringing a hand-whittled wooden flute as a gift. An elderly witch introduced as Minerva McGonagall, Transfiguration Professor and Voice of Reason at Hogwarts, presented him with a book on Quidditch, explaining that his father had been an exceptional player. Most unexpectedly, a tall black man in immaculate robes arrived with an elegantly wrapped package and a formal bearing that softened when he saw Harry. Mr. Shacklebolt. Gomez greeted him enthusiastically. Splendid of you to come. How's the Auror business these days? Still legally sanctioned violence against societal undesirables. Still maintaining law and order, Mr. Addams, Shacklebolt replied with a slight smile. Though I must say, your presence in Britain has made that task considerably more interesting. He turned to Harry, extending a hand. Kingsley Shacklebolt, Mr. Potter. I worked with your parents during the war. They were exceptional people, brave, principled, and uncommonly kind. Harry shook the offered hand, touched by yet another connection to his mysterious parents. You knew them well. Not as well as some, Shacklebolt admitted, but well enough to recognize their best qualities in you already. He presented the package. A small token for your birthday. Your mother once mentioned you'd need it someday. Puzzled, Harry unwrapped the gift to find a curious silver instrument resembling a small satellite dish attached to a compass. What is it? A faux glass, Shacklebolt explained. A rare variant designed to be portable. It warns of approaching danger. The clearer the faces that appear within it, the closer your enemies are. A practical gift, Wednesday approved from beside Harry. Finally, someone who understands appropriate children's presence. Shacklebolt's lips twitched. Miss Addams, I presume. Your reputation precedes you. Reputation is just history written by the survivors, she replied cryptically. The Auror's eyebrows rose slightly before he turned back to Harry. Use it wisely, Mr. Potter. Hogwarts is generally safe, but vigilance is never wasted. The party continued late into the night, with Pugsley's fireworks display, supervised heavily by Hagrid, serving as the grand finale. As the guests departed and the household settled, Harry found himself sitting on the roof with Wednesday, watching the last of the magical sparks fade from the sky. Are you ready? She asked, not looking at him. Harry considered the question. For Hogwarts? I think so. Thanks to all of you. We've given you tools, Wednesday acknowledged. But tools are only as effective as the hand that wields them. You sound like you're saying goodbye, Harry observed, feeling a sudden pang at the thought. Despite her morbid outlook and deadpan delivery, Wednesday had become his closest friend. Merely preparing you for temporary separation, she corrected. We'll see each other at holidays. And there's always the journal. Harry nodded, remembering the communication journal she'd given him weeks ago. They'd already tested it several times, writing messages that appeared in the twin book regardless of distance. Besides, Wednesday continued, you'll be too busy navigating castle politics and coursework to miss us much. I'll miss you, Harry said simply. All of you. Even Pugsley's explosions and Grandmama's questionable cooking. The ghost of a smile touched Wednesday's lips. We've created a monster. You've developed actual feelings. Your fault, Harry pointed out. You're the ones who treated me like I mattered. A tactical error we'll have to live with, she agreed, but the slight softening of her eyes belied the harshness of her words. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, until Morticia called them inside. As they climbed back through the window, Wednesday paused. Remember what I told you about houses, she said seriously. The Sorting Hat responds to what you value, not just what you are. Choose, don't merely accept. Harry nodded, filing this cryptic advice away with all the other strange but unexpectedly useful guidance the Addamses had given him. August 31st arrived with a sense of inevitability. Harry's trunk was packed with his school supplies, unusual additions from the Addamses, and clothing that actually fit. Hedwig's cage was cleaned and ready for the journey. The faux glass, communication journal, and Addams' emergency beacon were carefully tucked into his carry-on bag. The Dursleys, true to form, had maintained minimal contact throughout the summer, apparently hoping that if they ignored the situation, the Addamses might somehow disappear from Privet Drive. They'd been particularly scarce since learning that Harry would be departing for boarding school, likely celebrating their impending freedom from his presence. On his final evening before Hogwarts, the Addams family hosted what they called a proper send-off, a ceremony in their backyard that involved ceremonial candles, cryptic chanting, and what Gomez assured Harry was just a symbolic bloodletting, nothing to worry about. As moonlight spilled across the peculiar gathering, Grandmama stepped forward, holding a small vial of smoking liquid. For protection, she announced, dabbing the potion on Harry's forehead, just beside his scar. It tingled but didn't burn. Not against the obvious dangers, those you must face to grow, but against the subtle ones that offer no lessons, only harm. Fester approached next, presenting Harry with what appeared to be an ordinary penny. Emergency light, he explained with his maniacal grin. Just squeeze it 3 times and say, illumination required, and, boom. Instant daylight for 30 seconds. Saved my life in that Transylvanian crypt. Pugsley contributed a small box labeled open only in case of bullies, with a wink. Non-lethal, he assured Harry when Morticia raised an eyebrow. Mostly. Lurch presented a hand-knitted scarf in black and grey stripes. For winter, he rumbled. Gets cold. Thing scurried up Harry's arm to pat his cheek affectionately before presenting a tiny silver box containing what appeared to be a miniature severed hand, a perfect replica of Thing himself. A finder's charm, Morticia explained. If you lose something important, the little thing will retrieve it for you. Very useful in a large castle full of shifting architecture. Gomez stepped forward next, his usual manic energy subdued into something more solemn. Harry, my boy, the most valuable gift is already yours, the courage to be different in a world obsessed with conformity. He pressed a small leather case into Harry's hands. But a backup plan never hurts. Inside the case, Harry found a gleaming silver dagger with the Addams family crest engraved on the hilt. It's beautiful, he said, admiring the craftsmanship. But I'm not sure Hogwarts allows weapons. Gomez winked. Of course not. That's why the sheath is enchanted to make it appear as an ordinary quill to anyone but you. A family specialty, we've been smuggling blades into restricted areas for centuries. For writing very permanent corrections, Morticia added with a small smile. Finally, Wednesday approached. Unlike the others, she carried no visible gift. Instead, she simply stood before Harry, her dark eyes meeting his directly. Most people will try to define you by what happened when you were a baby, she said quietly. A scar. A title. A prophecy. Expectations. She reached out and, in a rare physical gesture, placed her hand over his heart. Remember that the most powerful magic isn't what someone else did to you, but what you choose to do yourself. She withdrew her hand, leaving something small and cold pressed against his palm. Harry looked down to find a tiny silver locket shaped like a coffin. If you're ever truly trapped, Wednesday explained, with no other options, open it. But only as a last resort. It contains one of the family's more extreme solutions. What does it do? Harry asked, both curious and slightly alarmed. Wednesday's expression remained inscrutable. It creates a choice when there appears to be none. That's all you need to know for now. Harry carefully pocketed the locket, understanding that some Addams secrets were better left unexplored until absolutely necessary. Morticia stepped forward last, gathering Harry into a gentle embrace. You came to us as a stranger, Harry Potter. You leave as family. Remember that no matter what happens at Hogwarts, no matter what challenges you face or truths you discover, you always have a place with us." Harry blinked rapidly against the unexpected sting of tears. These bizarre, macabre people had given him something he'd never thought to experience: unconditional acceptance. They'd never tried to make him normal, never punished him for accidental magic, never made him feel like a burden. Instead, they'd celebrated his differences, nurtured his strengths, and prepared him as best they could for the world awaiting him. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick. "For everything." "Such sentimentality," Gomez declared, though his own eyes looked suspiciously bright. "Calls for a toast." He raised a goblet of something smoking ominously. "To Harry Potter. May his enemies tremble, his friends prove worthy, and his teachers recognize greatness when they see it." "To Harry," the family chorused, raising their own drinks. As the strange ceremony concluded and they returned to the house, Harry felt a curious mixture of emotions: excitement for the adventure ahead, gratitude for the foundation the Addamses had provided, and a bittersweet recognition that tomorrow would mark yet another transition in his rapidly changing life. Later, as he prepared for bed in the guest room that had become his over the summer, things scuttled in to perform what had become a nightly ritual: checking under the bed and in the closet, not for monsters, the Addamses would have welcomed those, but to ensure no unwelcome surveillance charms had been planted. "All clear?" Harry asked as Thing gave him a thumbs up. The disembodied hand nodded, then made a series of gestures that Harry had learned to interpret over the weeks. "I'll miss you too," Harry smiled. "But I'll be back for Christmas. And I'll write." Wednesday showed me how to use the journal. Thing patted his hand comfortingly, then scurried to the window, pointing at the night sky where a single star shone particularly bright. "That's right," Harry nodded, remembering Grandmama's astronomy lessons. "No matter where I am, we're under the same stars. The same moon." He grinned. "The same cosmic indifference to human existence." Thing gave an approving wiggle of its fingers. He'd quoted Wednesday perfectly. As Harry finally settled into bed, his thoughts drifted to the journey ahead. Hogwarts. Magic. New friends and new challenges. Teachers who would help him develop his abilities rather than punish him for them. A whole community where he wouldn't be the freak. Yet something Wednesday had said kept returning to him: most people will try to define you by what happened when you were a baby. The famous Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The child marked by prophecy and tragedy. But the Addamses had shown him another path: the freedom to define himself, to embrace his differences rather than hide them, to find strength in what others might consider strange or frightening. Whatever awaited him at Hogwarts, Harry felt prepared in ways that went beyond textbooks and spells. The Addamses had given him something far more valuable than magical training: they'd given him permission to be himself, completely and unapologetically. And that, Harry realized as sleep finally claimed him, was the greatest freedom of all. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.